Exactly.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's
I'm
do it.
walking to an airplane to rejoin the most expensive congressional race in U.S. history.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, it's a referendum, really. Unfortunately, it's turned into whether Israel gets to buy seats in Congress. And what they found...
It starts with a simple question and ends in objective reality. Through our journey from there to here, we find one another and ourselves. And as the next 24 hours breaks free from our last, we gaze onward in reflection of the day.
Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.
Welcome to the Daily Wrap-Up.
Wednesday, May 20th, 2026. Thank you for joining me today. Now, obviously, unfortunate news for those that were hoping Massie was going to change the conversation. He lost in his election. But we're going to talk about a lot more than just the, Massie winning was a good thing and Massie losing was a bad thing. And, generally speaking, it's disappointing for a lot of reasons, even if you think that Massie was not an honest player in this conversation. Because and a quick kind of analogy, or rather overlap to another topic that I made at this point about a lot in the past. The Julian Assange conversation in WikiLeaks. One of the points I made often over the years, and one of the valid concerns about this was wondering whether it was sort of like a trap. Was this some kind of an intelligence op to try to trick people and, to set up a situation where media could be, held accountable or rather charged for crimes that were unjust? And so my point the whole time was whether or not you thought Assange was somebody who was honest, even if he was a CIA agent and was playing out the whole thing, you should have still been fighting for him not to be held, charged for those crimes, not held accountable because obviously there was no crime there. But the point is that you should have been still fighting for him to not be charged for those crimes, because even if he was an op or rather a dishonest player in the whole thing, the outcome was still going to have that effect. And so it's the same way I'm looking at this today. One of the things we're going to talk about is, interestingly, that him losing it. I wasn't expecting it to go this way for a couple of reasons. I'm not going to get into it all right to start, but was worried that this will put to bed in some ways certain conversations that should continue, and it will open the door to some that I think are dishonest. And I think the problem with this is that I see parts of this that make me worry about where this goes. A presidential run. And still in the long part of this, if we want to believe that there's somebody out there that may positively change this through the system, and I'm very doubtful of that, wouldn't that be, something we would want? But I think the skepticism is right in all this. And, back to the main point before I get into it all, that Israel being able to fund, let's just be as accurate as possible for those who are, I guess, unaware of the reality of the very defined connection between Israel and AIPAC and how that role is played, even going back to the original entity that was created by Israel and that it got changed into something that was framed as a U.S. entity after the assassination of JFK. We've talked about all that. The point is that AIPAC being able to buy seats in Congress, which is literally exactly what happened. Lobbying is paying to get influence in Congress or politics. But this went further, and I'll play a clip I've played before about this today of AIPAC and funding. This was the most expensive primary in history, apparently, or election in regard to congressional seats. And even I think Robert Barnes pointed out that I guess per voter, this is more than the last 7 presidential elections combined. I mean, how does that not shock people? And why would it be okay for one lobbying group to just dump money, and by the way, provably coming directly from Israeli oligarchs, people like Mary Adelson and others in other countries, funding into this and then ultimately manipulating the outcome? I'm being very careful with my words, only because I want people to see this who are new to this conversation, who are very obviously seeing this problem and not be scared away by what I clearly think is the reality, but something that may feel a little bit too far for some people right now. It's important to walk people into these things, because even the larger conversation of what we're seeing in the world today, the idea of the Great Reset, which, by the way, is not a theory. It's something that was publicly written about. Klaus Schwab wrote a book about it. They've outlined how they wanted to change the globe into some new dynamic. And of course, we argue that failed, right? COVID effort and but it didn't, though, because the same agenda is still rolling, and it wasn't a left-right thing. It was a global agenda. And so talking about this kind of global dynamic people reflexively go, that's crazy, even though you can literally point to how they outline what they're doing, the positions they hold that allow them that influence, the money they use, which gets that, but people resist. And so back to the main point today, understanding that AIPAC is able to do that, or any other lobbying group. It's not just about Israel and AIPAC, but that's the focal point today. The fact that they're able to do that should be a problem for everybody. Money in politics, right? It's an age-old concern. But hopefully you can dig deeper than just that. And then even if that's all you're looking at, I'm glad, because that's important and it needs to change. Beyond it is a whole deeper story of foreign influence on our political system, a conversation that is being more, people are more open to, now than I've ever seen. And I'm glad. And there's reason for it. Before we get into all this, and a couple of things that I want to outline in the beginning that we're going to get into in general, some stuff I want to start with around two-party politics type stuff. One thing that you probably have seen in regard to Kash Patel and the FBI and Carmen Leinberger, we're going to talk about that and the Jack Smith politicized conversation. And I'm sad to say, I think it's yet another case that it's at the very least, it's not where they should be aiming. I mean, even Judicial Watch has been and is calling out the same thing. And this seems to be a manipulation. We're going to talk about that, even though in and of itself, if there's a crime committed, they should be charged. But I'm talk about what it really is about. A couple points on Todd Blanche having to do with Epstein survivors, calling him out, and a couple of scattering points that you'll want to see in regard to something Trump just did, but then largely about Thomas Massie and how that connects with Israel. But then a major point just about what's going on in regard to Gaza, Lebanon, Israel, and some unnerving conversations that we'll get into about the sexual rape allegations coming from October 7th on both sides. A hard to read but very important article that Robert put out in regard to the evidence that is undeniable and the unfortunate, I guess, all entire of media push to hide all of that. Even the New York Times, by the way, even the New York Times, who put out the article that caused all this to start, talking about how Palestinians and the epidemic of rape is ignored against Palestinians, that same platform then published the article that basically lied about every single part of the story and pointed back to atrocity propaganda to try to bury that. And I mean, that's, again, it's so frustrating that these things, that is text, like that is exactly what happened. The evidence you can prove and everything, but you say these kind of things and certain people act like it's crazy. That's the problem we have today. That's what we're always fighting against. But that's why you're here. What I tried to do is aggregate information for people to see so they can come to their conclusions about it. Before we get into it all, I wanted to share something with you guys. Something's been weighing heavy on me. That's something that may be coming up in the next week or so, affecting my ability to do the show. So unfortunately, my father is in the hospital. And it's not something I wanted to get into and share over the last week, but he's been up and down. And right now I'm contemplating on whether or not I need to fly there and just be there. And I think that's what it depends on his situation. But the reason I'm sharing with you is, one, to know that may be, unfortunately, where a gap in the daily wrap up. And I'm not sure if I can find somebody else to fill in. So pretty much the first time I've ever had to consider not just taking a few days or a week, but something that may take longer. And I hope not. But overall, that's something I'll be dealing with. And I'll let you know whether I do small parts of it or if it may not even happen at all. We'll see. Hopefully he just gets better. But other than letting you know that may be coming up, I want you guys to, he may be tuned in right now for all we know. Send every positive energy and positive thought and prayers and anything else you have to all of us, to him, to what we're dealing with, to have him recover. Because I think it makes a difference. And that may sound crazy to some people, but I truly believe that kind of, positive energy and thought makes a difference in the world. So please, if you have a moment, send that his way, because it's, crazy what everyone's going through these days and all the different things that are building and all the different problems that are, cascading and connecting to larger topics. Anyway, the point is that I hope that you guys can take a second and send that to him. Anyway, just a personal thought. Now let's get into this, starting from opening point with Kash Patel. And I thought first of all, I forgot I included this. I'm going to come back to this later in the show. I just threw this right in the beginning. Thought this was strange. Secretary Kennedy on True Social captioned what I guess the rapid response on Twitter account captioned of Donald Trump saying something on True Social. Just so strange how they play this propaganda game today. But they mentioned East Palestine. East Palestine reminded the country that a single derailment can devastate an entire community's health, environment, and future. I've spent decades fighting to protect communities from toxic chemicals exposure, and you know what? He really has, and he deserves credit for that. And his work will, even no matter what he does going forward, will stand in my mind as something that had a positive effect. The sad point is, even though he's done that, he seems to either not be able to do anything about it or suddenly no longer care about most of those problems. And I'm not trying to be harsh. That is what I'm frustrated about in regard to any number of things of dioxins, glyphosate, food dyes, all the things they swore they were going to change. And I know he cares about, or at least he did for a long time. And now at least it seems the Trump administration or whatever seems to have their thumb on the whole thing is stopping him from doing what MAGA was supposed to do. Just to point that out, because I agree, and I do think he means that. But at the end of the day, nothing seems to happen. We still are flooded with dioxins and PFAS and all the things we talk about, which he has talked about. But the point is, and the families of East Palestine deserve lasting accountability. You know what? I agree. I agreed. It's not a partisan issue to talk about East Palestine. What I want to highlight, though, is not that. I want to get into this more in depth because I only just saw this. And I want to talk about the Railway Safety Act in that upcoming discussion. But one thing I wanted to point out, and one point I'll make in a minute about something that was said about Massie or something Massie said, is I see a lot of these different points of where I feel like we're being driven into a justification for some kind of, I see a technocratic evolution happening in the world. And so this seems to be interesting in the idea of trying to reimagine that system. Just a thought. I want to throw it out in the beginning because the idea would be to, as I go through this act, I get the sense this is about trying to revolutionize and reimagine and update our system in that way and thinking about how that interconnects. Throw that in. We'll come back to it in the future. But remember this for a later point we get into the show. Now, actually starting today. This is just funny, but it leads to the next point. Hannity tells embattled Kash Patel, obviously you're doing an incredible job. Which, one point is the idea that they live in this fantasy world. I mean, do you really believe, and if you do, ask how that's possible that Hannity can look at what's happening and argue he's doing an incredible job? So if he thinks that, that's pretty alarming. I mean, even people in the the team sport Republican side are screaming about how he's incompetent. And really, I think it's because it gives them a pass to make Trump not look bad when they need to. So think about that for a second and realize even hardcore people that have, even like the Tuckers that have now are on the other side or whatever they claim the side they're on now, Israel or anti-Israel, but not Republican, but not Democrat, whatever it is. Even their team is now turning on people like this. My point is that either he thinks that, which is insane, or he knows he's wrong and he's doing it because, the team. That's dying media, guys. The idea that that's still the thing is just embarrassing. But he's not doing an excellent job. I mean, objectively, he is really bad at this position. Doesn't have the credentials to do it. He continues to fail. He's called out by people all throughout the FBI, and he's blundered numerous times. His own actions have led to very embarrassing moments. And that's not even getting into all the superficial stuff that they want to make fun of him about, drinking and all the things that I frankly find mostly irrelevant when it comes to the position. Either way, it's kind of sad. So thinking of this point and the illusory nature of the entire left-right political, everything's doing, it's that they are the living embodiment of the "this is fine" meme. Both sides. Just never acknowledging what's going wrong and pretending like everything is going well. Well, Kash Patel comes out and says this afternoon, a former managing assistant U.S. attorney who supported Jack Smith's politicized investigation of President Trump has been charged with stealing the confidential investigation documents. Carmen Leinberger allegedly emailed the confidential material to her own personal email. Well, gee, this starts to sound frustratingly familiar and benign and trite or whatever you want to call it. Like, it's funny how all of these people, at least from some people's perspective, left think Trump is the biggest monster in the world. The right thinks Biden is the biggest monster, and I think they're all criminals. What's funny, though, is that why is it that none of them ever seem to get charged by either side with anything other than some emails, some classified things they put in the wrong box? And I'm not even trying to downplay some of the stuff we're talking about, but doesn't that frustrate you that we're talking about people that have been covering up the Epstein files, people that have objectively broken almost every promise they made to their own team, or both left and right of our government that are conducting illegal wars and breaking? And this is what we get? Not even Jack Smith, if you think that's somebody you should be aiming at the very least, Trump keeps talking about that, but a former managing assistant U.S. attorney who supported Jack Smith, and that you're charging them with what? 2 of them are felonies, 2 are misdemeanors, but largely like under 1,000. Like at the end of the day, we'll go through this, but it's simply something that feels small with what you could go after, which is what anybody honest seems to be saying, or the fact that I doubt this even goes anywhere. Do you realize that Clinton and Trump and who was it? Comey, Bolton. I mean, all of them are getting somewhat of the same charge about mishandling classified documents that never seem to truly go anywhere. Do you see the common thread? Now, Carmen Lineberger allegedly emailed, and by the way, as I say that, who knows where this goes? Maybe they actually get charged with it. And frankly, if they did do what they claim, it is a crime, so they should be held accountable, but it seems like that never happens with any of them, left or right. Emailed confidential material to her own personal email. And they say disguised it as a dessert recipe, like bundt cake or something like that, to conceal from record searches. So it seems, unless that was somehow an accident, which I find almost impossible, it seems clear that her intention was to hide what she was doing. And so as I looked into that, even that would be a crime. Because here's the thing. She has legal access to this content, right? She is the one who has the legal access as the person in this position, but was not allowed to do what she did by sending it because of the, we'll get to the terminology. What was it? The, injunction or whatever it's called. The judge basically said, these pause on everything. This has to stay here. You guys can't send anything. And ultimately it was completely sealed, right? So the point is, her sending it even to herself was a crime. But doesn't that feel small with the picture that we're talking about? I think so. Lineberger is charged with 4 felony counts in the indictment. Now, that's actually, as far as I can tell, not even true. As far as I can tell, it was 2 felonies and 2 misdemeanors. I mean, look it up for yourself. I guess we would like to say we should probably go with what Kash Patel, the FBI director, has to say, but something tells me that's going to turn out to be false. Let's wait and see. The FBI will not, because this came out 5 hours ago, the FBI will not hesitate to bring to account those who violate the trust of the American people, unless you work with Israel, of course, unless you're one of our allies, of course, unless we just don't want to do anything and we're lazy, of course, unless on and on and on and on, the thousands of fraud cases and thousands of things they haven't followed through with. I mean, I'm not even making it up. I'm trying to make it quick. I mean, we could just simply point to the Israeli in government entity that flew to the United States to literally, not to make it too shocking, people haven't heard it, was setting up meetings with young children to sexually abuse them. And the police caught him in the act, arrested him. And then the U.S. government stepped in and he got flown back to Israel and nothing ever happened about it. Tom Abramovich, I believe was his name, worked for the Israeli government. Literal true story. You look it up. The Guardian wrote about it. What's crazy, though, is that person was trying to hurt American children. You guys didn't care about that, though. Hundreds of those examples. Texas One says, for the nothing is happening crowd, here you go. Yeah, because it's important. You know what I mean? Because the nothing's happening crowd, which, by the way, is predominantly on the Republican side, I would argue, are saying, where are the Epstein files? Right? What about smaller government? What about less spending? What about, the same old tap dance? How about stopping the vaccines? Oh, here's some mRNA self-amplifying. So nothing is happening is not about you guys going, because here's the thing, guys. This is what you keep getting. Indictments for Comey. And these guys come and go, see, we told you it's all coming down. Well, that's an indictment and the last one failed. Indictments are simply accusations with enough to get to, basically, for those that don't know, they have to present evidence, but it's the whole point is the indictment leads to actual potential charges through the case, in court. The point is that indictment, in many cases through politics, can be pretty damn flimsy. Don't forget, Comey and Letitia James, they were indicted and those failed. Because it's not simply all said and done, but these people either don't know that or want you to think the indictments they went to jail already. And so by saying nothing happening, by pointing to something that hasn't happened yet, is priceless left-right paradigm stupidity partisanship. I mean, think about that. You're going, for the nothing's happened crowd, nothing's happened yet. How embarrassing for you. And let's see, this guy is 255,000 followers. That's pretty sad. Now, continuing, Kash Patel. This afternoon, a former managing assistant U.S. attorney who supported Jack Smith's politicized investigation of President Trump has been charged with stealing the confidential investigation documents. Former managing assistant U.S. attorney who supported Jack Smith's politicized investigation. Now, for those, again, that don't know, Jack Smith was the person who was, Trump sees as this weaponized, politicized attack on him personally, which, by the way, I agree to some level. But I also have to, this is where it has to be, if you're going to be honest about it, from my perspective. And of course, I could be wrong. There are obvious things that Trump did that he should be held accountable for. If you can't acknowledge that, then I think you're trapped in the paradigm. There are obvious things that Biden should be held accountable for. If you don't believe with that or agree with that, then I think you're trapped in the paradigm somewhere. But my point is, Jack Smith, or any of these things, or anything, you could go any level to any side. I think this was aimed at him in ways that I think were objectively manipulated. But my opinion is because they don't want to go after the things that are truly there because it opens the door to both sides of the paradigm. So yes, there was clear, weaponized, politicized everything. But at the same time, Trump, I think, is a criminal. And there's plenty. It's a nuanced perspective that goes to a larger, not a left-right view. That they're all committing crimes, but these things they go after are small things meant to fail, in my opinion. I mean, when's the last time you saw any of these people go to jail? Ask that. Now, here's what the Washington Post had to say. A former federal prosecutor in Florida was charged Wednesday with stealing a copy of special counsel Jack Smith's sealed report on his investigation into President Donald Trump's alleged retention of classified documents after his first term in office. Prosecutors alleged Cameron Mercedes Berger, 62, emailed a copy of the report to her personal email address in January 2025, renaming the file as Bundt Cake Recipe PDF in an apparent attempt to evade detection. And on top of that, though, like, I don't know. I just feel like that's so the likelihood that you're sending, I mean, I guess it's possible, a Bundt Cake recipe while you're looking on Twitter while you're at work, but it just seems like a flimsy thing to do. Well, with no, it seems to suggest you want it to appear as if you want to be caught. I mean, you have to point out, as I often do, the level of incompetence in the government today is insane. So it's hard to know. At the time, the summary of Smith's findings was the subject of heated litigation before U.S. District Judge Eileen M. Cannon, who had ordered it temporarily sealed to protect the rights of those who were named in it, including Trump, but who had not been convicted of a crime. Now, and it's important, right? Because the larger thing, aside from the politicized, false nature of all this, in my opinion, is that whoever it is, Trump or anybody, you're in a position that's very political and you're not actually, it's an accusation. It's even an indictment. You're not guilty yet. We seem to tend to forget in the partisanship today that you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty in this country, even though they come out and somebody looks like they're a Democrat and suddenly we know Democrats did it and we know they're guilty because they're in charge. It's every situation from Tyler Robinson on, or before that. So here, my point was, if Trump is the one in that situation, well, I agree that especially as that in the position he was in, it shouldn't be something that's just widely bandied about because people will use it against him, even if I feel like it should be, like if he's a criminal. But it's still, the point is to be objective about all this stuff. Even though I think Trump deserves it or he's a criminal like Biden does, my point would be not to go, well, he deserves it, do it then, because that makes you just like them. Be better. Right? Do what you know is right. Stand to your integrity, your principles. The judge has since made permanent her order sealing the document. Now that's why ultimately that became a crime for her to send it to her personal email because it's supposed to be sealed. The indictment against Lineberger, who served as the managing assistant U.S. attorney in Fort Pierce, Florida, does not say what, if anything, she planned to do with the document. Because that's what I was curious about. Like, so technically it hasn't leaked. It seems pretty minor in the larger scale of things. That ultimately what she violated a rule or a law, but only sent it to herself, and it was somebody who already had access to it. Do you see what I mean? Like, that's a very small thing at the end of the day. And so she faces four felony accounts, including theft of government property, and entered a non-guilty plea during a court hearing in Florida on Wednesday. Now, yeah, it says 4 felony accounts, but I'm telling you, when you look into this, it does not appear to be 2 and 2. But again, it's all right now. This is being reported off what Cash said and what's being floated. By tomorrow, we'll get more information. And if it looks to be 4, I'll point to the other examples and say that was wrong. That's why these things are being put out. It's up in the air. And that's kind of what I was laughing at before. At one point, you could have been like, it's 99% the case that Cash isn't going to come out and just embarrass himself and be wrong. Even if they're dishonest, even if we know they're like going to manipulate you, the idea that they would just blatantly put the wrong thing, knowing you could look it up and call them out, seems insane. But that happens all the time today. 10 years ago, I don't think I mean, it was very, if it happened, it was likely a mistake. That's not to speak like it's not good or bad. That was just, they're better at lying to you, I would argue. But so today, that's why I will find out tomorrow. I mean, look at how many times Donald Trump has put things out that we can prove in the moment are fake, and they just all stand by it. In some cases, all the way to this day. MS-13 on the knuckles, stuff like that. Now, Trump was charged with 40 counts of retaining classified information, obstruction of justice, and false statements in connection with the classified documents probe. So think about that. Donald Trump is being charged with this, basically the same idea. Well, I guess it's different. She's taking information that's been sealed and saying it to herself, but it's kind of the same wheelhouse. He's retaining classified information that he had access to as the president, but he had access to it. So the crime is really about him retaining it beyond the window. So I, again, find that to be such a, like, it's not like he was secretly stealing top secret documents he wasn't allowed to look at. That would be a much bigger deal, even as the president. See, you see how interesting that is. And it says, but Cannon dismissed the indictment in a highly unusual ruling, citing issues with Smith's appointment as special counsel. So ultimately dismissed the indictment, but because he was basically issues with the appointment itself. So what about the actual case? What about the charges? The whole thing felt very strange. She later ordered Smith's report on the investigation sealed after a push from his lawyer and the Justice Department, led at the time by several of the attorneys who had represented the president during the criminal case. Doesn't that feel strange? And so I guess we just have to assume that it all did. I mean, look, my opinion, quite obviously, is these people are criminals, guys. You could prove Trump is breaking the law all over the place. It's not unique. They all do. But to pretend like this probably didn't show. I mean, look at the way they're covering up the Epstein files. They all told you they would release. And I mean, that's not some hyperbolic statement. That's not something where we're going, there's, that I believe there's more that they say there's not. We can prove they're doing that. We can prove that Blanche and Kash Patel and Bondi and plenty of them broke the law in verifiable ways. One of them was not releasing their internal dialogue during this process. That was literally in the law they passed. They didn't do that. Todd Blanche, the same, didn't release plenty they were supposed to. The main one you should remember is the Nevada, the Zorro Ranch. There's probably 4 examples I could point out that you can look up for yourself and prove to yourself that they never followed up on things that were very clear. Zorro Ranch was one of the most important where it was New Mexico, I believe. One of the politicians there spoke up and said, this is a big deal. Someone sent me this. It was actually a Republican commentator that sent her files proving that there were bodies buried, things were happening. I went over this many times. 2019, 2026, she followed up and said, still, nobody has investigated this. And then you can see Kash Patel and Blanche acting like, well, we're all done. There's nothing to do. There's no valid allegations. It's disgusting. And we'll get to a point on Epstein in a second. Now, here's Tom Fitton. Now, this is what I find so interesting. And what I'm really trying to stress for people when I say the fake MAGA, because I keep going over this, and I think it's very simple to understand. You can decide if you think it's the majority of people in the Republican conservative field or not. But I think it's pretty obvious to understand that there were people who believed what Trump was going to do. And I'd argue they're conservatives, right? They voted for him or whatever you think because they wanted smaller government. They wanted less spending. They wanted the end the Fed and whatever else, Epstein files to be released, lock her up, whatever. Well, none of that happened. So it's easy to see that Trump promised a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of conservatives that never got that. Now, you could argue they don't care about that, but I don't even see how that makes sense. So there are a lot of unhappy people. They might not be speaking up about it. So what I mean is that's what I believe when they were selling what MAGA was to the world, what they were promising all the things that they wanted. That didn't happen. So to turn around and call Trump the fake MAGA movement, or to call the Nick Sorters and Benny Johnsons and Trump, that's not the fake. They are the fake MAGA movement, the political side. The people are not. Right? So to say MAGA is fake is pointing at the politicians who lied about what they sold to people. Now, there's plenty of people who still call themselves MAGA, who I'm pointing to today, who don't care, it seems, about America first. They care about whatever Trump says is America first. And I'm sure you can see, because you're not a stupid person, that you can turn and see there's plenty of people with a MAGA hat, with conservative values, who think they are fighting for America first and are now recognizing that that's not, at the very least, what people in the administration are doing. Maybe some of them haven't realized Trump is the one, like some of them still think Trump's being played or he's blackmailed or whatever. But my point is so obvious, I think. And there's plenty of ways to get into this deeper idea. And of course, I could be wrong. But just to understand that when we're talking about the fake MAGA cheering for this, they're the people that are cheering for somebody being removed from a position who embodies everything that they said they wanted. And so and that's, again, why Trump and his team were floating the idea that Massie was going to be on his team, because he knew you wanted that. So that's my point, guys. I think that's so important. I seem to get so much pushback on that, and that's okay. These are just my opinions. I could certainly be wrong. But it's not, I don't think it's debatable. The debatable part is the amount of people. I think that's pretty clear. And so my point would be that people like this are at least feeding into that, or maybe are that. And I say that like a Tucker Carlson point. I don't know Tucker Carlson. Maybe he's playing, maybe he's an opportunist. Maybe he's selling you all these ideas because he wants you to think he's on that side. Or maybe he believes them. That's for you to decide. Same thing here. I don't know. I mean, I tend to think Tom's done some good work over the years. But here he is saying some stuff that shows you that he's challenging what the team is doing. But in this case, making it about specifically the FBI and the DOJ. But if we can't recognize by now that those are simply extensions of Donald Trump, it's very easy to see. I think that's willful. I think you're choosing to ignore that. But we can hope, right? So my point is, here he is in 2025. saying, where's the serious investigation against Trump's, the weaponization of politics against Trump? Because this is what this pertains to, right? The Jack Smith conversation. And so here he is in 2025 saying, why hasn't he done anything yet? And so my point about all these people that keep going, it's coming, Obama's going to jail, and pointing to old content, is that they either don't care about accountability or have been fooled into thinking that this old content is happening now. That's very simple. And so here is somebody who cares. I would argue this would be a real MAGA person who genuinely wants to see these things happen, and they're not. And so he's going, why aren't they doing it? Now he's falling short of calling out Trump for not doing it. You can decide why. But at the end of the day, it should be. If you're arguing that he should be going after all these evil people, and then he said all the evidence the entire time, why would it still not have happened? Here's what he said in 2025.
Where is the investigation, the broad investigation of the lawfare against Trump? Where is it? See no evidence of it. And even if it began, I don't think the FBI ethically can do it because they're compromised, they're conflicted, the same with DOJ.
I have a hard time with that argument, and you guys know that. Oops. I mean, I don't disagree. I mean, it's obviously, I mean, I shouldn't say, I'm not, it could be possible. Let's put it that way. I think that's very obvious, right? I mean, it could be clearly possible that whether it's like, whether I think some people want to hear it as like, Democrat holdovers or whatever, or deep state infiltrator, whatever. I just think it's just people who, I mean, at the end of the day, I see all the government in one entity. I think we should. But so my point is saying that sort of allows some people to pretend it's not Trump's fault. Right. So it's just these old people that are holdovers or deep state people who are tricking Trump. Well, there's so much evidence that shows you, even if that is the case, that he's still not doing what you want and he's choosing that. But either way, the point is it should have happened by now. Even if you want to pretend it's because Cash and Bondi were tricking Trump or whatever you want to say, you still have to acknowledge that these people have been choosing not to do something. And then for the same point, all the fake MAGA I'm pointing to still don't seem to care. Still love to go Cash is the best and Bondi was the best until both of them, Bondi and Noam, get kicked to the side.
This is why I said it once and I will say it again. President Trump, as the chief prosecutor in chief, the executive magistrate, should direct the prosecution, investigation of the deep state assault on America.
See, to me, that just seems like almost naive. I mean, the idea that, so the point is that Trump is the honest one, therefore he has to be the one to do it. I don't agree with that. But so I'm not, so my point would be that I just think that that's somebody who wants to believe in Trump. Then you can choose that.
Set up a separate investigative unit reportable to him. He can direct the investigations. He can direct the prosecution.
Now remember, this is 2025. I still argue the same. Even then, I think this was objectively clear. But so my point right there would be, right? So that's a person, there's nuance between my point of the MAGA elements here. This would be somebody who believed that what Trump promised was what MAGA represented, but now feels that it's not happening, but it's because of those two people or whoever he's, not Trump, but those ones. But either way, it still represents the idea that the real MAGA elements are the people who believe those things were going to happen, not the politicians and the media, social media people who said, whatever Trump said was what was supposed to happen. So here is what he posted. He for the podcast, he captioned his 2025 clip and today posted this. Today's indictment of a senior DOJ prosecutor, that was the one we were just discussing, engaged in alleged crimes targeting Donald Trump. Again, the indictment of these people shows DOJ and FBI can't be trusted. Why? Because Donald Trump should appoint prosecutors separate and apart from DOJ FBI to investigate the lawfare against him and other innocents. His point is, guys, that this is small potatoes, right? Where's the serious investigation into lawfare? Not some tangential entity that emailed them some stuff to themselves that they otherwise had access to. That's peanuts in regard to what they're alleging at the very least. I agree. And so what he's saying, though, is I guess he's arguing or insinuating because the FBI and DOJ are not on Trump's side. Well, okay, then let's just say that's the truth. If we go forward for the rest of this time and that doesn't change, then that would mean Trump is okay with that or not able to change that. These are just things to consider. Now, on the idea of fraud, it's pretty embarrassing, right, that you have a situation where we'll get into some obvious ones like we just showed you, by the way. This is insane to me. This one's very real and new and obvious. The U.S. set to drop charges against Indian billionaire accused of fraud. The guy was accused. Biden was charging him for fraud. Now, it's not that he's not guilty. He simply hired people that were connected to Trump in his lawyer team recently. Then they went to talk to Trump and offered to give $10 billion for jobs. And they dropped the case. Or they're about to. That's the real story. And so what's crazy is you have this coming out from Vance on the 12th saying, we're unleashing the most aggressive federal anti-fraud efforts in American history, which we'll get into in a second. The reality of how it seems that everyone's talking about the levels of profiteering and I would argue fraud and corruption. And I mean, like petty, small ways, like Trump watches and shoes and fake cell phones that they're putting forward, or crypto, but it's way deeper than that. Those are just the ones that are easy to see. But so think about Vance putting this out with what we see going on that I think is not really that different than previous administrations. It's just more obvious. But because it's more obvious, that's why I think this is even being put forward. Do you really think they're fighting fraud?
Take the fraud issue seriously. We really have the most accelerated, aggressive anti-fraud operation that we've ever seen from the federal government.
Every week, I get a report from the task force. We have our weekly meeting, and I am shocked every single day by the things that we find.
Oh, yeah. And then, okay, what'd you do about it? Did somebody get arrested? Did you go after them? Are they getting charged? No, nothing. Okay, just want to check.
This is not just theft of the American people's money. This is also theft of critical services that the American people rely on.
No amount of fraud is too big or too small. If you're defrauding the taxpayer, you ought to go to prison, and anybody who's helping you ought to go to prison too.
I agree. Now, I guess we'll just say again, let's wait and see. And we said that last time. We said it a month before that. We said it a year before that. Well, I guess we'll just wait and see. And those out there that go, it's all happening. Well, I'd love to see what you're pointing to, right? This example is another example of a maybe. It's not happening yet. It's an indictment. It hasn't happened yet. Same with James Comey, even with his seashell Instagram post. If the fact that even is being pretended to be something serious is pretty embarrassing, especially because it comes down to a free speech issue. And these are people that were screaming about saving free speech. And now it's like, you can't let Comey put shells on an Instagram post because it threatens Trump. So no free speech for him. Hypocrites. And again, I argue that's fake MAGA because I argue people who believed in what that actually represented, and I don't mean what Trump represented, but what they pretended they were going to do was all about free speech. It was all about these things, but that's why it's all being pretended. But people who really wanted free speech are going, oh, that didn't happen. Elon is censoring people. Donald Trump doesn't care. Hate speech. We'll get to that in a second, actually. Now, the just secured April 14th, the Trump administration's fraud problem. The Trump administration has settled on a strategy, frame efforts to withhold congressionally appropriated funds as fraud prevention, and hope that hard questions about evidence, process, and legal authority disappear. They don't. Federal law has well-developed procedures for how agencies must combat fraud. The administration is conspicuously bypassing them. That bypass is not incidental. It is both the tell of pretexts and the source of the administration's growing legal vulnerability, and courts are beginning to say so. Now, we should read this. I mean, this is just to give you we've talked about this extensively. The amount of fraud that we can see going on, or just basic conflicts of interest, or any number of layers of that, it's insane to me. And again, I'd argue it's probably just more obvious than usual. I'm not sure why that's the case. Maybe it's incompetence. But it's pretty sad for them to stand there and act like this is the largest fraud campaign, an anti-fraud campaign. Well, these are some of the most objectively fraudulent people I've ever seen. And even just in their own personal lives and dishonesty. Oh, Judd Legum posted this. Number of stories about Trump buying, and that's another example I even forgot to mention. That we just covered this. I mean, let me see if it pops up. Palantir, NVIDIA. It's not popping up. Oh, there it is, I think. Yep, perfect. I'll include this link for you. This is just one of the many articles. I think it was even covered in the New York Times. Just ask our enemies. Records show Trump was quietly buying Palantir shares weeks before he posted about it on True Social. That's just crime, guys. That's basic and lazy manipulation. That's something people go to jail for. Whether you want to call it insider trading or guess what you call it, just fraud, because he's the one boasting it. At the end of the day, he's using his position, and so is his family, to wildly benefit himself. That way, he did the same thing with Palantir. He did the same thing with Which one was it? NVIDIA. He did the same thing. It's all listed down here. We went over this recently. I'll include this for you. But yeah, go ahead and tell us how they're fighting fraud. Now, that went around, right? Numbers of stories from these platforms about Trump buying and selling hundreds of millions of dollars in stocks in the first 3 months of 2026. CBS, 0. CNN, 0. Fox News, 0. NPR, 0. All the ones that allegedly hate him very much. Wonder why that is. Now, here's a previous show, 2025. Remember Doge? Are we going to pretend like that wasn't fraud? Are we really going to stand back and look where we can, prove that they didn't do what they said? That's why it doesn't get talked about. Don't you think they would be constantly screaming about how much they saved you today? If they did then, they did not. And you can prove that, especially since they're spending billions and billions and billions on these wars and other agendas and ballrooms and all from you. Well, some of it for the ballroom. The point is that it was a fraudulent act. It was about trying to solidify the AI direction, which we can all see, and unsilo all the personal information under the guise of efficiency. For them anyway, and they did that. AI, Israel, all the overlaps, they're all training their AI models on your personal, private information. It's not a joke. I've proven this 100 times over. Their strategic partnership is very well documented for training their what they call it, their large language models, their machine learning. They're using your personal data. And they didn't save money. They lied about that. They used even old things to claim they did. The whole thing was a fraud. The Real ID, two-step, BlackRock's Panama Canal, and Trump's Ecuador election meddling. That was from 2025. But just the fraud is unbelievable. Now, on the point of other just dishonesty, and back to the Epstein point, Epstein survivors blast Todd Blanche for lying under oath. Now, one of the things I thought about with Trump and his weird little ballroom announcement where he did this stand-up kind of presentation that turned out to be just about the ballroom, kind of felt like it was pulling away from this. Epstein survivors of millionaire sex offender Jeffrey Epstein accused acting Attorney General Todd Blanche of lying under oath on Tuesday during a Senate appropriations hearing. And this is the same argument. You can say they're lying, certainly possible, but the same thing that was stated under the previous under Bondi. The point is, they never spoke with her, and they said that. She said she spoke with them, and they were in the room going, "You're lying. You refused to meet us." And so here is Todd Blanche again, standing there and saying they met with them. Now, it says acting attorney General Todd Blanche has not met with any of us. As survivors, we previously sought a meeting with former Attorney General Bondi, but no meeting occurred. We've already reported on this, guys. It says we should not have to be this persistent to engage with DOJ, the department responsible for handling the Epstein files. There's no misunderstanding this, guys. Protecting their privacy and answering for years of secrecy. We have already reported abuse and allegations involving Epstein associated perpetrators to the FBI and federal authorities many times over the course of years. We should not be asked to relive the trauma again and again because the system failed to act. The burden is not on us to keep making reports. It is on the DOJ to investigate credible allegations against perpetrators and co-conspirators and to account for the government's mishandling of these matters. Given Blanche's comments, we are again asking DOJ to meet directly with survivors and their counsel, not to ask survivors to start over, but to hear their concerns, explain how these failures occurred, and provide clear answers about the release, redaction, and withholding of Epstein-related records going forward. Because don't forget, they've only released half of the documents we know that they have. Now, basically, it was Van Hollen said, I spoke to the representatives of the survivors, and they're extremely frustrated that you keep calling for people to come forward. And he lied. He said, I've met with them many times. They said they have not. That's the gist of the story, guys. So, look, this is kind of like the Iran point. You can prove that they didn't. They were saying under Bondi. It's on the record. He steps in. They're in the room behind him, and they're like, we have not met. You can prove they haven't met. So why is he lying? I don't even think I need to answer that. I think it's very clear what's happening here, that they have completely couched this conversation, and what it's really revealing is they have never cared about the people that they wanted you to think they were fighting for. They used them. They used the survivors of sexual abuse. The survivors of sexual abuse at the hands of people that worked with people tied to both of them. Donald Trump, Blanche, Biden, the U.S. government. Think about that for a second. And they are now refusing to do anything about it. They used them. They used you. You don't really need to think too hard about this, guys. It's pretty damn obvious. Now, getting into the coordinated Twitter point, just quickly wanted to follow up on. We talked about this on the 18th, the Twitter's coordinated agenda. I saw an interesting quick point that I wanted to follow up on that one, and that specific thing. Now, remember, we shared Elon Musk sharing a 2024 video, no commentary, of a January 6th report. Now, as far as I can tell, there has been nothing new that's happened. So my point was, why would he then just on this day when all these other big things were happening, would he just, no commentary, share this report? Now, it's certainly possible that he also just didn't realize it wasn't new. I wouldn't surprise me. This account is the one that first shared it. And it says, Jesse Waters just dropped this May 17th. Nope. Just in case you were confused, I said it last time. Here is the actual, this is from Fox News a year ago. It's almost 2 years is the point. Here is the post from Twitter that he has deleted, by the way, very recently. I think you need to ask why that is. Now, this may not seem like a big deal to some people, but what I really want people to see, there's no way this is not being coordinated. Jesse Waters, Elon Musk, I mean, this is insane to me. So he has this post, which is now gone, which seems to have been recently removed. Why would Jesse Waters delete this seemingly viral post about January 6th? Here it was. Fox News alert. You can see it was 2024, January or December 12th. Justice Department bombshell report on January 6th is dropped. Now, remember, I agree this is a big deal. I understand that there were operatives there. We've all proven that. We proved that within months of this very conversation. This report simply just went over it way after the fact, sort of like the COVID-19 conversation. Now, my point on top of that is that nothing happened. Still, not the first administration. Now, nothing happened. Now, we're not, or technically, it was after it anyway, but generally speaking, with any of these larger investigations, you've had two administrations to consider the lack of action. Now, this one specifically was after that one. So Biden middle, then on to Trump's next administration. And the point is, he's had all this time to do something, and he hasn't. So why would Jesse Waters delete this? I don't know. But what I want to point out is that Elon Musk shared this. Oh, let's go back to this. After he claimed it was new. And I've said, well, this is 2024. You're sharing this, I think. I mean, are you suggesting Trump double-crossed everyone? Well, of course not. You're hoping this fools people into thinking that action is coming, even though it's not. So Wall Street Apes, which is another huge account, one of these larger ones, this is 1.3 million followers, the next day after we talked about this, shared it again. Breakdown of the new report. The new report. It's not, this is a 2024 post. So why are they all doing this? It could just be that they're all that bad at this. That's also possible. But I really think what we're talking about, because Jesse Waters seems to have recently deleted this, that this is about trying to distract. This is a team politics effort to just dump this. I really don't even know how you can explain the fact that they would delete that. I mean, I guess you could argue that somehow it was, accident. I guess you could find reasons to explain it. But I don't know. What do you guys think? I still find this fascinating. And there's 1,000 examples like this. In fact, here's another one. Actually, no, it's this one. We'll get to it in a second. Actually, I'll show you really quickly and we'll come back to it. We're going to talk about Trump saying that he could be president in Israel, which is like the 5th time he said that, by the way. I don't know why suddenly now it's causing all this discussion. It should anytime, but it's funny how now is the one that started catches. But I just want to point this out. Here's Nick Soder posting this. President Trump, I'm in Israel right now. I'm right now at 99% in Israel. I could run for prime minister. We'll just quickly check this out. Not all of them are exact, and some of them are just people making commentary. But you notice this. Nick Sorter, Eric Dougherty, Suppressed News. Look, just one boom, 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 boom. Just one after, all the same people. Donald Trump commentary, Truth Social, hotspot. It's just like the same thing. I think that's insane. Now, that's just the nature of this platform today. But what I'm trying to highlight is that it's overlapping with people like Elon Musk. 1.5 million follower accounts that are deliberately trying to deceive people. Now, those of you out there that see this, you already know, and it's not a big deal for you. But some people, I think, need to understand that this isn't just about propaganda. You're being gamed. Like, this is a literal, and imagine how alarming this gets with where it's all going, with beyond what we're dealing with more deepfakes and algorithmic control and AI and God knows what else this goes to. Just think about that for a second and realize this does become important. Now, here, Nick posted something I want to highlight. He says the House has overwhelmingly passed a Trump-backed bill to restrict, because right now we're still, just in case you're not sure, in the segment right now of the two-party illusion sort of propaganda side, the House has overwhelmingly passed the Trump-backed bill to restrict companies like BlackRock from buying up single-family homes. We've talked about this. It's funny how these guys like recycle these same old things. Now, there's a valid concern here. More really for Blackstone, that's important. But BlackRock, too, when you understand the general idea of what these shadow banks do, he says, long overdue. It'll head to the Senate. Now, I'm willing to bet you it doesn't happen either way, because the government doesn't want this and for a lot of reasons. But even if it does, here's an important thing to think about. Well, first, here's what Justin Lurking said. Just so no one is actually fooled by this BS, large investors only own between 0.5 and 1% of all U.S. single-family homes. Now, I think the number is a little higher than that, but it's in single digits. It's small, as far as my research showed. And under 1% of total single-family home purchases. And the reality does seem to be very, very small. It's largely the beyond single-family homes. So as usual with this administration, he says this is all just theatrical BS that won't actually change anything. I happen to agree. Now, first, just many different platforms. No, BlackRock isn't buying all the houses. Now, there are some, and it does matter to me in a larger sense of just any of these larger things buying up. It becomes a situation where over time, it's the whole you own nothing and be happy point. And I think we should be concerned about that. Here's what's really driving up the rent. This was 2025. Now it says the BlackRock is not buying all the houses. Large investors own a small share of single family homes nationwide. Blackstone is a private equity firm that acquired thousands of homes following the 2008 financial collapse. BlackRock is an asset manager that invests in behalf of the clients and owns very little real estate directly. Yes, but the problem is that people use that that work through them, including foreign entities, guys. People often confuse BlackRock with Blackstone. After 2008 crash, Blackstone acquired a large number of foreclosed homes and spun off Invitation Homes, one of the largest single-family landlords in the United States. Okay, so thinking of that, it's interesting that they then passed this or tried to, specifically aiming at BlackRock. Now, this is another one from 2022. I thought this was interesting. Bill Gates doesn't own U.S. farmland. BlackRock doesn't own most houses, or most rather. Now, Bill Gates, even if it shows you, owns too much. And I believe it's probably more than what they say here, because literally people, like I keep saying, they work through other shell companies today. Bill Gates is buying up majority of American farmland, and BlackRock is buying the majority of single-family houses. But I'm supposed to believe the biggest threat to us is Elon Musk buying Twitter? One person wrote on, of course, that's within this whole dynamic. But those numbers aren't, what they're claiming, majority. That's not accurate. This is according to a January 2021 article by the Land Report. Gates owned 242,000 acres of farmland through 2 investment management firms, and all the ones we don't see. That's alarming to me, by the way, just because of what we know they're doing. But it's not illegal, but it matters to me. So the point overall is this idea of framing it as, Bill Gates is taking farmland, BlackRock is taking small homes, which I think we should care about, as well as many other things, as well as foreign entities. But pointing all this out, first of all, is to recognize this weird focus on what appears to be sort of a misguided effort. And I think it's just because they think that's what the story is, and they think that's what's going to appease the mindless political followers out there. I don't think they understand that most Americans are not mindless and are not simply following along anymore. That's my opinion. But they're trying. But here's the point, I think. We just talked about this. Trump says it's good to have 500,000 foreign Chinese students in the U.S. and China to purchase U.S. farmland. And guess what? This caused a lot, and rightly so, of major Trump supporters to go, what the F? That's insane. This must be a troll. What's happening right now? And, I'm surprising it took that long. What about vaccines? What about on and on and on, right? But everyone has their line. And this caused a lot of people to rightly recognize that this is insane, that nothing means anything to him if these are the kind of lines he's going to cross. And so, and it's not about whether you think it's right or wrong. It's about the fact that plenty of people who supported him thought this was a massive red line. And even before the Israel focus, what was Alex Jones and largely the conservative, that was all about China. Funny how that just doesn't seem to matter. I don't hear Jones screaming about, it probably does somewhere in a show, but overall, China to purchase U.S. farmland. So why is that not a problem? Does it only matter when it's one group or one bank? No, it should matter regardless, especially if it's foreign entities. But he doesn't seem to care. So that is what I'm trying to highlight for people that want to support these things and stop listening to the mindless people that push out whatever they want you to think and yell things at the top of their lungs, not even fully understanding what they're talking about. But also, just in case you care and it does matter to you, well, guess what? BlackRock is very close to Donald Trump. So if you think it's a problem, then maybe you should recognize that he's in Trump's inner circle, or that Bill Gates is also in Trump's inner circle. And they've had like 6 meetings since he took this administration. So let's recognize, regardless of what the concerns are from the people screaming on Twitter, that Trump does what he wants anyway. And they'll try to gaslight you into thinking it's good no matter what he said 2 seconds before. Now, on that note from before, Trump, I think this is probably the 4th or 5th time I've heard him say something like this. He came out and said this.
I'm right now at 99% in Israel. I could run for prime minister, so maybe after I do this, I'll go to Israel, run for prime minister. I had a poll this morning, I'm 99%, so that's good. But no, he's
A lot think he's joking, and he could be.
a wartime prime minister, and I just don't think they treat him well.
Yeah, poor Benjamin with his genocide. They just don't understand him.
I think they have a president over there that treats him very poorly. And
You're on the same page with
Oh, it almost tried to restart there. It started and stopped. But okay, right? I mean, you could argue he's just being joking and trolling the left or whatever you want to think, because this is the way he plays it, though, right? Greenland was kind of a joke until it wasn't. It's fair. It's good politics, and I don't mean that as a compliment. And so, in the end of the day, what he's saying is, I could run Israel. People go, "How am I supposed to take this?" Even the joke that you're more popular in the country we're accusing you of being controlled by, doesn't that seem like a weird thing to say? It's probably why he's even saying it. Because there is a tactic to sort of just standing openly on the thing that they try. That makes it, people then go, well, he wouldn't say that if it was real. Right? Yeah, that's a tactic. But either way, it's pretty crazy. So Benny Johnson comes out today and says they shot him in the head. Well, not really. Raided his home. Impeached him twice. Indicted him 91 times. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Remember, there's my point. Indictments can be meaningless when politicized. Think about that. Threatened him with life in prison. Didn't happen. And today, Trump and the president of the United States and undisputed commander in chief. Yeah, exactly. So all of that was a bunch of theater. I genuinely believe to some degree. Because, there's any number of individual actors that could do any number of things, even if things are theater. My point is, with all the stuff you could talk about, your argument is that's why he's so powerful. But is that the truth? Even his own team is turning against him at this point. The reality in my mind is that all of this speaks to the fact that it was not real. Just like Comey, just like James, just like Clinton, just like every other person you could point to. It's a bunch of ongoing theater, in my opinion. I don't mean that as it's fake. It's about a political organization that recognizes they're losing power and they don't want to be held accountable for the criminal acts that go back a long way. SGT report comes in and says, good one, Benny, you little Zio bootlicker. I simply, wow, okay, this is getting interesting. So now realize he's been critical to some degree, but he was a very large Trump supporter and very much on the Republican side of things, and he's calling out people like Benny Johnson. I just want to show you that divide. The idea that you have people that are not Democrats and are very much in the partisan game who are now recognizing these people have never been on your side. They're on the side of the politicians, not the people of any side. Think about that. Now, to get into the Israel overlap to all of this, before we get to Robert's article and largely what's still happening in, Massie and everything else as well, is in this general point of AIPAC influence, Israel influence on American politics. Glenn Greenwald came out and said yet another way the American right completely reverses its claim principles for this one group. Now, again, my argument, my opinion, what he's pointing to is the team sport right. Now, yeah, there's always going to be overlap, right? My point is, though, when you say the American right, you're talking about the politicians, you're talking about the GOP, you're talking about the Nick Sorters, Benny Johnson, the people that are on the team. Now, yes, some of them are in between there. But my argument is that you have a lot of conservatives who supported that team, but are now unhappy because, as Glenn points out, you're contradicting what you claimed you were going to do. In this case, Trump forced DEI programs for Jewish students into universities. We talked about it. Ben Shapiro and Barry Weiss cheered when Palantir created 180 new jobs, quote, solely for Jewish students, also real. And now Hugh Hewitt calls for Jewish DEI appointments to the Supreme Court. And this is not a joke. And so my point is, Trump supports these things. And so what we're talking about here is a contradiction. It is a hypocritical stance. And like I said before, it went from this broad woke hate speech point to a specific woke hate speech point for the right. That's all it really talks, because you could, they don't care about the pronouns and all that. But at the end of the day, it's about controlling speech. And so all they're focusing on is specifically anti-Semitism and other forms of things we'll get to in a second. You can't dare talk bad about Charlie Kirk. We'll put you in prison. So my point is, guys, that it shows hypocrisy, and that many, you can decide a majority, I believe it is today, conservatives are calling it out. and believe they want to make this country great again, even if you disagree. And they believe now that Trump and his team do not. So Trump and his team, fake MAGA. The people that supported Trump to begin with, I argue largely, real MAGA. Now, the DOJ, to make this point more clear, announces a 15-city nationwide anti-Semitism awareness and action tour to increase reporting of anti-Semitism, which, by the way, means speech. I mean, at the end of the day. Because, I mean, I guess you can call violent attacks anti-Semitism. You wouldn't call it anti-Semitism. You'd call it a violent attack. So when they're talking about anti-Semitism as disgusting and what's another word that people might use, just insulting and racist as you may think it is. And I would agree. Being unnecessarily, judging somebody on their skin, their religion, the way they look, for, baselessly, I'd argue it's just stupid. And you're a small person. But I would defend your right to do it every day, because that's what free speech and principle, that's what it looks like. And so my point is for the DOJ to come out and say, we're going to do a tour to increase that, getting you to tell on your neighbor for doing something that's within their constitutional rights should be something you scream about. As Glenn has been screaming about, Greenwald. I'm going to play a clip here in a second. Where was that? I feel like I have it in here somewhere. I should have put it right here. I'll include this for you. I'll even play one of these clips because it's, actually, no, I forgot to grab this one. It was the doctor one I grabbed. This thread's always important. I put this out in 2024 while he was going through his run for presidency with Israel flags behind him every time. And I thought that was strange. And of course, all these different clips of Donald Trump literally telling you that he will, I'll just play the one that is the most obvious. I think we have this one first. Let's see. Oh, no. Okay. There wasn't a clip. So let me play this really quickly. This is, and all in that thread is Trump telling you that he will remove you, take action against you as an American if you do something that Israel doesn't like. Now, in this case, displaying this yet again, he says he'll remove the Jew haters from the country. Now, you can argue that if you hate Jews irrationally or for any reason that you're a bad person and you're disgusting and you should be called out. I would agree. If you, whatever, you could think whatever you want. If you hate Christians for no reason, I think you're disgusting. If you hate Muslims for no reason, that's the same thing. Or, whatever you want to call it. It's just the people are out there doing that. They have a right to think and feel what they want. But I agree. I think people are bigoted and racist. There's plenty of it out there. Left, right, white, black, Jewish, Christian. It exists everywhere. And it should be called out no matter where it exists. Extremism, fanatics should always be called out. People wanting to make it about one side or the other are part of that problem, guys. Or one group or one religion, same thing. My point is, Trump's saying that in the first sense, even if they're out there genuinely just saying they hate Jews, is simply saying you're not allowed to feel that way. You're not allowed to say that. That's it. How can you agree with that if you believe in free speech? Right? Now, the secondary part is what he's really pointing to in the large sense of it, and you can look at the statistics, are people who they are saying things that they say wink, wink, mean that. From the river to the sea, free Palestine. That's what they're talking about because that's what's caused this conversation. It's insane to me that again, my point is most conservatives agree and understand with that, or understand and agree with that. That's my opinion, but it's just plainly insane. And overall, this is being driven from Israel. That Miriam Adelson was at most of these, and she was the one that funded him into this position.
We will remove the jihadist sympathizers and Jew haters. We're going to remove the Jew haters.
I mean, jihadist sympathizers, the same point, guys. If you go out and break the law, if you go out and armed, whatever you claim, whatever they claim is that, well, yeah, then there's a potential being held accountable for that crime. Simply saying you support whatever, ISIS, whatever you want to talk about, no matter how crazy you think it is, of course you're allowed to think and say and feel and say, but not in this country anymore, right? You're not even allowed to come out and say, this is a dangerous line that was crossed a long time ago. It's only gotten a lot worse. And that's not to say that we are okay with people saying these things. I have a right to stand up and say, you're disgusting and you should be called out for it. That's where that line ends, guys. It's the same point as every single conversation we have. The fact that, and as always, and I know it gets tiresome, but the same point, if you believe that needs to change, then let's have an honest conversation, right? Let's have a real conversation about how you want limited speech because you believe that's where the world is. And even if you make a valid argument, hey, maybe you'll even convince me. The point is people are arguing that they believe in free speech and then saying, but not that because that's gross. Or the left, because you have to say my pronouns the right way. Well, none of that matters, right? That's free speech and it shall not be infringed. It is the whole point. back to the reality here go. This is what he pushed, just like the left.
Jew haters, we're going to remove the Jew haters who do nothing to help our country. They only want to destroy our country. And we will never let the horrors of October 7th be repeated here.
Yep, and we'll get to that in a second. You know, all the lies they made and the reality that most of people were killed on that day were killed by Israeli fire and bombings. This has been from their own documentation, by the way. The order of the Hannibal Directive, which was admitted by their own military. You know, these things don't matter to some people. But overall,
Jew haters, we're going to remove the Jew haters who do nothing to help our country. They only want to destroy our country.
well, okay, let's just say you hate America and you want to see this country fail. You have a right to. That's free speech. That's freedom of ideology. That's freedom. And the idea of now this administration claiming you have to adhere to our mindset and assimilate and whatever else. I mean, it's just fine. If you believe that, ladies and gentlemen, then make the argument that you no longer believe in the Constitution or freedom of religion or freedom of anything. That's okay. If you think that, that's fine. I will think less of you, but you have a right to think what you want. The sad thing is so many of these fake people out there pretend that they think the same as we do, and they do not. And there's a whole thread here, guys. There's a whole thread of many examples. This one saying that Israel should control Congress like they used to. It's not a joke. I've covered this many, many times. So here we are with the DOJ, Donald Trump's DOJ, who says they want free speech and says they're fighting the woke censorship, says a 15-day nationwide anti-Semitism awareness and action tour to increase reporting of anti-Semitism. Okay, what does that mean? Let's just say you think it's okay because we want to call it out. Okay, what then? We're reporting it to what end? You all know what it means. That means they're going to take action. Whatever that looks like. From a government perspective, no matter what it is, that's wrong. Strengthen collaboration between local and federal law enforcement. Exactly. What does law enforcement look like when you're talking about words? Well, you already know, guys. It's the same stuff Elon criticizes in the UK, but pretend isn't happening here. And foster broad interfaith opposition to anti-Semitism among Jews, Baptists, Christians, Muslims. Oh, isn't that weird? Broad interfaith opposition to one thing against one group? Why wouldn't it be broad interfaith opposition to racism against any group? Because you know why, guys. Because this is focused for one thing. And it's not about Jewish people. It's about Zionism and using that to make people think that's what it's about. I digress for today, since that's a deeper conversation. But the point is getting you to think, or rather just the reality that ultimately they're going to use this to censor people, guys, just like every other piece of our government. Now, on that note, during this, this is TikTok, but same thing. I had an interview with Faithless Town. I'll grab that link right now. This is Owen, and I wanted you to hear what he had to say about this, and then realize that TikTok deleted it, removed it. Why? Violates their guidelines. Think about what he's saying right here. And he says, it's all rigged. My take on American electoral politics. It says TikTok banned this clip because apparently you're not allowed to question elections. Well, I mean, this is the TikTok that the U.S. government has now essentially, it's okay now because we removed it from the China bad guys. And here we are being censored. Big surprise.
Believe that the American electoral system, our democracy, quote unquote, is completely rigged. It is just an illusion of choice. Like Bush versus Kerry, just seeing like how rigged everything was. Like you have two guys, both part of some secret society, right? Skull and Bones, and just really behind the media illusion that they're so different. They really have the same values. They represent the same class of people in our society. They have the same interests. I really think the last president that wasn't completely controlled and co-opted was JFK. And I think that's why they blew his brains out in broad daylight in front of everyone with the cameras rolling to let you know. Like they let you know they own these people. Now, people want to continue to believe that there's some hero that that's going to save them, like a Trump or Obama. And all you have to do is cast your ballot every 4 years and everything's going to be fine. That it's a really nice, convenient thing.
That's it. That's where we are today. I mean, I would imagine it's the blowing JFK. I mean, you're not allowed to state a fact that somebody blew out his brains. I mean, think about that, guys. That's all he said. That's why he thinks it happened. Think about a world where you're not allowed to say what you think about something. He didn't even go into graphic detail. And this is the Larry Ellison control dynamic or the Israel influence censorship. That's what we're talking about. I find that to be outrageous and obvious, but just one more point in a sea of obviousness that we're watching right now. Faithless Town interview, revolution through music. Now, I really was planning on doing a lot more of those. There's stuff, life happens, but I still plan on trying to do more interviews around that music, kind of revolution through music side of it. I love that idea. And there's plenty of good people out there with, in the music side that are overlapping in this field. And make sure you follow Faithless Town and Owen himself does good work. Now, here's an example on censorship that I was just referencing that, as the point of Elon Musk and UK. And, funny how this didn't get the same attention. Isn't that strange? Tennessee man, and this is the good side of it, by the way, Tennessee man jailed over Charlie Kirk post wins. $835,000 settlement. Now, why was he being put in jail? Because he dared. I mean, this will actually, I think this will shock you. We talked about this briefly before, but if you haven't seen it, it's not what you might think. It's not some over the top joke. It's not some threat. It's literally stating what Donald Trump said to get over it. Seems to be it. And it's about how they claim a school interpreted what that might have meant. And this guy stayed in jail. And he rightly won because no matter what you think he meant, even if he meant what they thought he meant, it's speech. Are we forgetting where we are? I mean, my God, and this is my point, is that so many, the libs of TikToks, and all these people that scream about caring about free speech, when the Democrats do something, were silent because they didn't care, because they wanted this person, in my opinion, and I mean, let's be real, they stated this publicly, that anybody saying things about Charlie Kirk like this deserves to be put in. They're just such absurd hypocrites. They don't care about anything. At the very least, they don't have anything that's sacred, principles, no integrity, because they're willing to sacrifice what they say they care about the moment that it's something they, oh, well, we don't like those people, so who cares? How pathetic. May 20th, Tennessee officials will pay and again, thank you for taking our taxpayer dollars to pay out a guy that you guys screwed over. Love how that works. $835,000 to settle a lawsuit filed by a man who was jailed for more than a month. A month. I mean, I actually can't even believe that I didn't talk about that while he was in jail for a month, because there's so much going on. It wasn't in front of me. And there's a reason for that, guys. These things get drifted to the side. So I should do a better job trying to find these kind of points within all the nonsense on these platforms. A post he made about the assassination of Charlie Kirk. The 61-year-old retired police officer, get that, spent 37 days behind bars before authorities dropped the felony charge. Dropped it. Think about that. 37 days, they dropped the case. My God, they wanted to punish him, is what I think. During his time in jail, Burchart lost his post-retirement job and missed his wedding anniversary and the birth of his granddaughter, according to a federal lawsuit Burchart filed in December against Perry County. Its sheriff and the investigator who obtained these warrants, according to the filed in December against Perry County, its sheriff in the investigator who, it's Perry County, the person, and the investigator who obtained the arrest warrant. Quote, I am pleased my First Amendment rights have been vindicated, he says. The people's freedom to participate in civil discourse is crucial to a healthy democracy. I'm looking forward to moving on and spending time with my family. I'd be a little bit more incensed about that, quite frankly. Oh, no, it's not. Wait, that sentence reads weird. Perry County mayor. So it says, according to a federal lawsuit, Burchart filed in December against Perry County, comma. Oh, I see. This is exactly why, on a weird editor side note, I think there should always be a comma right there. When you're listing three things, Perry County, its sheriff, and the investigator, there should be a comma right there. And I think it's like Chicago versus AP style, if you guys know what I'm talking about. There is. I always include it because that's the confusion you can have. Anyway, continuing. It goes on to say, Burchart was arrested in September after he refused to take down Facebook memes that joked about Kirk's killing. Now, it didn't joke about Kirk's killing, quite frankly. It may have made light of it, but it says, which had prompted an outpouring of grief among conservatives, including Perry County, which is near Burchart's home and which held a candlelight vigil for Charlie Kirk. The meme Burchart posted that prompted his arrest read, this seems relevant today. That's it. Then he featured Donald Trump's words, who said, quote, we have to get over it. A quote that explained, it was said by Trump in 2024 after a school shooting at Perry High School. So He's clearly making commentary on the fact that here's Trump after a shooting of children that says, we got to get over it because of political reasons. Then somebody that they care about gets killed, and he makes the same exact point. So you're going to tell me that it's acceptable for Trump to do it over there, but not him in the same exact context? Yes, that's how that played out. Now it says Perry County Sheriff Nick Weems told news outlets that most of Buschart's hate memes were lawful free speech. No. They were all lawful free speech, but residents were alarmed by the school shooting post. He called it a school shooting post, fearing Buschart was threatening a local student, even though Weems said he knew the meme referred to his school in Iowa. Buschart's bail was set at $2 million before he was released, and the case drew national attention. $2 million, 37 days in jail because he posted a Facebook meme. Literally, just like Donald Trump said in the same context. Because this is rapidly happening in front of us, and we're not even talking about it. And then you get the Elon Musk frauds directing you to look anywhere else and largely using false information to get you That's not to say it's not happening in the UK. It's a big problem there. My point is he's largely using and overlapping with manipulated information, lying about things they're covering, even though it's based on a real story. There's reasons for all of this. This matters. Now, what's crazy is they leave out what seems to be the largest part. We'll go to the next article. But what I find, hold on. Oh, yeah, it's right here, Tennessean. So what we're talking about here, before I get to this next part here, where was it? County me told so threatening the school and hate memes. But that's what it was. The idea that he's saying most of his posts were lawful speech. Now, you have to understand, that's him being manipulative in his own right, because they're not claiming there was ones that were illegal. They let him go. There was no charge. So by him saying most of them were lawful, but residents were alarmed, what he means is they were all lawful, but this one was alarming and we took action. He's trying to cover his ASS. Disgusting. Tennessee man arrested in connection to Charlie Kirk's social media post. This back from September 2025. Now, according to Weems, the same person, Buschart posted a Trump meme which depicted Trump saying we have to get over it. So it's Trump with that statement, the words, which was a direct quote from Donald Trump after 2024 school shooting in Perry, Iowa. That left 1 dead and 7 wounded. Buschart's picture consists of an image of Trump, along with the quote, and it is attributed to Donald Trump on the Perry High School mass shooting 1 day after, but does not mention the state of Iowa. So basically the point is they assumed incorrectly in 2 ways. The photo is topped with the phrase, "This seems relevant today." That's it. A cross-referencing of the photo done by the Tennessean found this image to be posted numerous times across multiple social media platforms, not connected to him, going back to 2024. Weems said Buschart posted the picture, quote, to indicate or make the audience think it was referencing his high school. Yeah, that's sure as hell the way you make it sound like you weren't absolutely jumping to conclusions or using politics to go after somebody for what you disagreed with. What do you mean you thought it was to make you think that was the case? Which means you guessed. Now, they realize what he's saying is, we thought this picture of Trump that said, get over it, this might be relevant today, that's it, somehow referenced our school. Good luck working that out. Secondarily, because I guess Trump said it about that school in Iowa, the same name. Secondarily, that you then think that means he's threatening you in some way? That he's threatening the school? I mean, guys, I don't even believe this. I don't even believe they actually thought that. That's insane. And it says this led teachers, parents, and students to conclude that he was talking about a hypothetical school shooting in this school, not the one in Iowa that it was referencing. I mean, think how in the world you work that out. Now, I think these people played this up and got parents in a worked up situation to go after this person. Because that's the air. I mean, it's diminished a little bit right now. When they were in the peak of this weird ice dynamic, which by the way is still happening, but it was like at its kind of hyperbolic peak, there were people taking advantage everywhere. Police officers, ICE members, because people were getting away with everything. My point is, at that moment, the momentum was there, and they hated this guy. This is all my opinion. But are you really going to pretend that they thought that was what was happening? And even if you think that we're in a world where you could police this way and say a picture of Trump that says these 2 phrases, we're going to arrest you for 37 days and put a $2 million bail because we think that's what you meant? God darn it, that's insane, guys. It says this, according to the statement, quote, investigators believe Buschardt was fully aware of the fear his post would cause and intentionally sought to create hysteria with the community. Okay, so he makes this point in reference to Charlie Kirk and using something Trump said with a different school to make a point about why it's Trump saying over here, we should get over it, is no different than him saying it. And somehow you work that into, you believe he was trying to make these kids in a different school that had nothing to do with what he said worry about that. I mean, this is just made up, guys. I mean, that's just insane. I'm blown away by that. So the point is, he won, obviously. Thank God, because that's the reality. I mean, who knows? It could have gone in another direction with our broken system, but he almost won $1 million. And he took that money from you, or he didn't, the government did, to give it to him because he called out the government that was wrong. You see, even when they lose, you still lose, guys. That's why government shouldn't even exist, in my opinion. But overall, this is what this government, this Trump administration, and every other part of it, Biden included and beyond, this is what they want. And, or at the very least, to take it from those that aren't considering that larger point, that Donald Trump's administration drove this into reality. So clearly they don't believe what they claim. Now, I'll include our discussions about this. Was Israel involved with Charlie Kirk's death? Let's look at the facts, as well as a great article from Carrie Wedler. The Charlie Kirk hysteria is a blueprint for future political chaos. She does a great job in this article, and she's working on a really good one right now that should be coming out pretty soon for TLAV. Now, on Massie and Israel, quickly to go back to the 19th, Dave DeCamp posted this top story on Haaretz. Haaretz, the leading Israeli newspaper. The most consequential Republican primary for Israel is happening in Kentucky. I mean, this isn't even, it's not even hidden. It's right on the surface of all of this. Because my point is, this is not about AIPAC alone. Israel is the reason it's happening. But it's funny how while it's all happening and it's very clearly Israel that cares, somehow these Republicans, Team Sport, are able to go, what do you mean? Is AIPAC has nothing to do with Israel? Oh, but separately, Israel is absolutely dead set on making him lose? Yes, but not through AIPAC. No, separate thing. Oh, then how exactly? Oh, just by talking about it. Sure, why not? Now that they've set up this obvious political funding mechanism to be able to do exactly what they want, and when they want him to be gone, funny how AIPAC does that for them. I mean, come on, guys. The willful ignorance about how obviously AIPAC is doing Israel's building or bidding, it's very difficult. And again, I argue it's people that just are blatantly dishonest and the occasional stupid person, because it's obvious what's happening here. And again, if you look at our previous work, it's not debatable. AIPAC, I'm blanking the name off the top of my head, was an Israel organization. And two things happened before JFK was killed. Actually, I'll grab this interview that you'll appreciate before we go forward. Oh, come on. Of course it doesn't pop up. Let's see. Let me just type it all the way out and see what happens. See if that pops up. Should. Of course, on Rumble. There he goes. Oh, no, that's the wrong one. Of course, that's funny. So I was looking for that. Oh, that's weird. Here it is. I'm surprised it popped up. It is brave. But this is a good discussion. Corey Hughes is the person who started the independent media token as well, which we're something that I'm hoping continues to grow. But also he's one of the, in my opinion, one of the best leading researchers when it comes to this very topic. Corey Hughes' interview, was Israel behind the assassination of JFK? It's a good discussion. Now, where were we on that? The point was, what was it now? Oh, that's right. So I'm glad I didn't forget that. So the point is, we're in regard to AIPAC itself, but there's two main things that happened before JFK was killed. He, at that time, was trying to make that group register as a foreign agent, the group that later became AIPAC. So my point is that you can have this on the record where that's the case. Then you also have the discussion of the Dimona nuclear facility. Now, he got killed, obviously, and then both those things never got addressed. So you can make up your own mind, but I think it's very obvious to see there's connections there. But overall, that it was a group that was then turned into, on Wikipedia, you can look this up. That was literally turned into an American front kind of thing. Or I could play I might as well. Let's play this again. Because understanding this now, I do think is important. This is about making the shell companies, right?
They buy it from, or I think they were buying it from.
We have an incredible array of possibilities of creating foreign companies that have no weight being traced back to Israel, shell companies over shell companies who affect the supply chain to our favor. We create a pretend world. We are a global production company. We write the screenplay. We're the directors. We're the producers. We're the main actors. The world is our stage.
Did you see any surprises in Gaza?
Surprises?
Yeah.
You mean intelligence surprises?
Pages, walkie-talkies. Do you know how many equipment, treated equipment do we have in these countries? You can't, you don't. I do.
You mean you mean booby-trapped equipment?
Not only booby-trapped.
And spying.
Manipulated equipment. All right?
In which countries are you talking about?
All the countries that you can imagine.
Wild. Means everyone. That's the pay your attack conversation. No, the point was the fake companies, right? So to understand that they could set up a fake American company and front and put it forward like it's not secret, guys. Also, and by the way, on top of that, I'll include this article that I think is important. And this has to do with kind of the same general topic. This is the idea of Eric Prince, Comframe Solutions, and the idea that Israel, the same thing, creates fake companies, and he was used as sort of the front, as the American, to make it look that way, to appease the legal system. All this is easily documented, guys. It's been going on a long time. Thank God people are finally starting to see through this. Now, the point was, back to this, the most consequential Republican primary for Israel. Now, Fibonacci had an interesting point. This person chimes in and says they believe they're stealing the seat. Now, remember, he lost as of today, or as of yesterday into today. Their opinion, though, was if Tim Cast is coming out in support of Massie, so did Alex Jones, interestingly enough, then he knows the outcome in advance. Now, I don't know if I agree with that. It's certainly possible he just understands that this is probably going in a certain direction. Like, this is how they do this. I don't think these people are fair weather everything. And I think at the end of the day, Tim Cast has been blindly on the side of Trump and all the rest of this for a long time, and pro-Israel. And so for him to side with Massie doesn't make much sense at all. Unless, as she points out, it was trying to make people think that he was in support of him, knowing that it wasn't going to happen. That's her point. You can decide if it makes sense. Interesting to think about. But I remember, the bigger point too is that a lot of them, like the Joneses, and they're coming out and saying that, and then he loses. And now the whole point was about supporting Trump's midterms choices and all this. That's what Alex Jones was saying before. So I just don't find it to be honest. But you can decide for yourself. Oh, wait, let me include that one for you. Now, in regard to Massie and how all this went down, some important points to include in all this. And then I'll get into my general thoughts about going forward. But even Tucker Carlson and his network here came out and said Thomas Massie is facing a globalist-funded character assassination. You gotta love that, because it's so interesting. So now you have Alex Jones and Tim Pool coming out into more. It's more so on Alex Jones' point, since he's been the one allegedly fighting globalism his entire, supporting Thomas Massie, because that's what he just did. And he's the one telling you that Trump is the one fighting globalism. But here's Tucker Carlson telling you that Thomas Massie is being attacked by a globalist character assassination. Right? But Alex Jones has been supporting it. So my point is, the entire time, even though right now he's claiming to support him, the point would be that means Alex Jones has been inadvertently supporting globalism the entire time by backing Trump. I just find that hilarious. But overall, just recognize that it's... I'm not even saying you should be trusting this person either. Question all of them, myself included, guys. You should just look for good information. But what I think is interesting is, even if you think Massie is not genuine, that what we're watching is an obvious, coordinated globalist agenda, whatever you think that word means. We're talking about a multiple nation sort of effort for something larger than just this one seat. Interesting. Now, that could be because this seat makes a difference on where this congressional situation goes. That's not how I look at it. I honestly don't even think that that's what we're talking about when it comes to the voting process. But overall, it could simply mean that the momentum of this makes a difference for the conversation. Back to this clip. This is what I pointed out the other day, which also kind of gave me pause. But now that he's lost, it's worth considering what he said.
Do it. Okay, I'm walking to
this was before he lost.
Airplane to rejoin the most expensive congressional race in U.S. history.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, it's a referendum, really. Unfortunately, it's turned into whether Israel gets to buy seats in Congress. And what they found out is that my seats are really expensive. They've probably, when this is over, will have spent $20 million and come up short.
So why is Israel the only country that gets to buy elections in the United States? Or does any other country get to?
I've never seen Great Britain or Australia or even Germany play in our elections here in the United States. But
yeah, that's not true at all, by the way. But what I think is interesting, though, is we're talking about AIPAC, right? But see, it's you're going to get the argument from people, and there's a valid point you made that it's not accurate to say Israel in the sense of what is, but it is what that is what it represents. And let's even be specific for those that haven't thought this through. AIPAC, even if you want to pretend it's an American group, is advocating for Israeli interests. That's what it does. And so overall, it's important to understand that he's casually talking about it like Israel's doing it because, guys, that is the reality. When it comes down to the facts of what the outcome is and who's behind the action, that's what it is. I've done this research around AIPAC and all the different moving parts of the larger lobby for a long time. But understand what we're talking about is the AIPAC lobbying mechanism, but that's important.
Israel gets so much from the United States. It's a one-sided relationship. They get us to be their proxies in wars that they want against their enemies. They get our military assistance, they get our technology, they get our bombs, they get our tax dollars. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a very one-sided relationship. At least with NATO, we pretend that they would come to our aid someday if we needed it. And even that's a ruse.
Yeah. So
So before we get to what happened, I just think it's worth, we made a big point about this. And like that day or the day after, it's not not hidden at all, but you get Hegseth coming out and literally speaking like event after event at at the gallery, Ed Gallerine's election campaigning. It's a crime. It's a violation of the Hatch Act for him to do that in his official capacity. So what does he come out and say? To be clear, I'm here on my personal capacity. It's exactly what it talks about. It doesn't exist. There is no world in which, as the Department of, that in the executive branch, that you, especially this politicized, that you going out endorsing candidates does not represent you as a politician doing so. So even look, just like I would make the same point about the like I said, make your case for free speech. Well, I can acknowledge that the reality of that makes a carve out for personal capacity. So I'm not saying that by him tactfully making that statement to avoid the criminality that he's right now doing that, but I'm arguing that it is, and so we should change that. Right? The reality being that this is just a loophole for them to aggressively get involved in this, and both sides allow it to happen. That should not be the case, guys. And of course, behind him, America first, always. As you're literally fighting a war for Israel, as you're fighting for Israel's prophetic end times prophecy, or rather, redundant, their prophetic end times, their end times prophecy. I mean, let's be real. If you haven't heard that and you think that sounds crazy, it's important to understand that it has been publicly discussed from the highest level of this conversation that Hegseth and his military from the Department of War is openly telling the military they're fighting for Armageddon, that their commanders are in there telling them this is about God's plan, that Trump has been anointed by God to do this for the prophecy for end time. That's what they're openly saying. And it still doesn't reach people. It blows my mind. And so you're going to tell me that's America first when you're fighting for a prophecy that necessitates the fall of the West? Look it up. These people are insane. And they're also not America first. But overall, he's out there trying desperately to get somebody Israel wants in politics in American politics. You think that statement's incorrect? Show me where I'm wrong. I didn't say you could. I do think Israel did this. I didn't say Israel did this in that statement, though, did I? He fought against one of the most obviously conservative politicians in line with those values against him to fight for somebody to be in American politics that Israel desperately wants in American politics. They're openly saying that. Does that sound like America first? Is it alarming for something committing a genocide or a group that we're concerned is, I don't know, influencing American politics for them to openly influence American politics? It sure should matter. And they still did it anyway, which shows you how desperate this is or how much they don't have control. Now, back to this point, still on the 19th, I thought this was hilarious. Here's good old Bennett Johnson. J.D. Vance perfectly explains why Republican votes matter, or rather that Massie is the wrong guy. That he's not a conservative. Even this platform comes out and says, not even close. Thomas Massie is one of the most conservative members of Congress. He voted with President Biden's position just 1.8% of the time. So what that means is Bennett Johnson lied to you. Massie sided with Democrats 1 out of 4 votes. So he's lying, guys. He's lying to you. Now, why would that be? What a shock. Benny Johnson's dishonest? You mean the plagiarizer? Oh my God, that's crazy. They're all lying to you. And I still think plenty of honest people fall for these guys. That's why I make these points. Well, let's play this again. Now that even Twitter has called this out, my point is this isn't just Benny Johnson. It's J.D. Vance. It's Donald Trump at the highest levels of power. So you have to then think about whether, well, I would argue that Johnson, Nick Sorter, whatever this little network is either just following their lead or is being directed to follow what they're saying. But my point is it comes down from the executive branch where Trump and Massie, all the rest, or rather, Vance, are putting out an idea and then they repeat that idea. And then you can later prove that they're all lying to you, literally prove that they're false. That Massie is on the record one of the most in line with what they claim they're fighting for. Not what they say or what they claim, or rather what they do. Here is what Vance said yesterday.
Against Republican Representative Thomas Massie, who has opposed and criticized some of the Trump administration's aims. How would you address those who fear that principled disagreement or independent thinking is discouraged within the party because of how it can be framed as a betrayal instead of as internal accountability or an opportunity for debate and negotiation?
Now, if you actually listen to her question, she's actually on, she sounds like she's on the side of Massie. Listen to it again, because what she's really saying is framing independent thought as challenging the party. And then he goes on to literally explain why Massie is challenging the party. Like, I don't want to be redundant, but to me, it just screams desperation. Like you could be more tactful than that. Like, but his art, you just knows that we have to fight this. And so in response to the very point about you doing that, you respond and we have to do that. Just seems wild to me.
To run against Republican Representative Thomas Massie, who has opposed and criticized some of the Trump administration's aims. How would you address those who fear that principled disagreement or independent thinking is discouraged within the party because of how it can be framed as a betrayal instead of as internal accountability or an opportunity for debate and negotiation?
So it's a very good question. And let me say, this one is hard for me. And the reason it's hard for me is because Thomas Massie and he's one of the first people that ever reached out to me about my book or about political office. I've known Thomas Massie well before I ever got involved in politics. Thomas's wife died well, maybe it was a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. It was a little while ago. She died very unexpectedly, was a very sweet and kind woman. And I was probably one of the first people that called Thomas to offer my condolences. I think the problem...
All of that's meaningless, by the way. It's all a bunch of emotional fluff to make you, to act like I'm a good guy and I care. But now let me tell you why Massie sucks.
With Thomas, and I've told him this in private, and now I guess I'll say it in public, is it's one thing to disagree with the party on a particular issue. It's one thing to to have your independent stand on a number of questions. And by the way, some of the stuff where Thomas Massie has been independent against the Republican Party, I've agreed with him with. Thomas and I worked together during 2023, where I was trying to stop the limitless flow of American money to Ukraine, and Thomas was one of the people I was working closest with it. But that's one thing. Being independent, having your own opinions is one thing.
Okay.
Voting against the party on every single issue.
Which he does, by the way. See, this is now you're lying, bud, because that's not what happens. The point is he's voting in line with his principles. And he has not changed that. Now, I'm not advocating for Massie. I'm still very skeptical because I am in general, no matter what they do. I think we should all be like that. But what I'm saying is you can look at what Massie's been saying for his entire career, and he's been pretty damn consistent in following through with what he has to say. They just stand up and act like the party wants to hide the Epstein files or whatever we frame that as. And he goes, well, no, we should release them. And they go, you never side with the party. Well, guess what? 99% of the people that support the party want those files out. That's what she was actually asking about. So all he's doing is going, independent thought's good, one thing, but then independent thought that we don't like is bad. He's basically just repeating the same thing and calling it bad. That's what he's doing.
Eventually going to make too many enemies. And that is the problem that Thomas has had. It's
enemies. Oh, so he's making enemies because he does what he thinks is important, if you think about it like that. That's what he's basically saying. He chooses to go this direction. But see, what he's trying to insinuate that it's because of some other secret reason. That's what they keep doing everywhere. He secretly sides with the Democrats. Well, that's not even that's not even the reality. If you look at what he's voting for half the time, it's things that most conservatives have wanted. And you could argue that Democrats, it's much more nuanced. Let's put it that way, in every single way. And if you care to look at most of these things, not just the one vote or any, not just even this administration, it's worth your time to do so. And it's not even about Massie. It's about the fact that Vance and Trump are willfully lying to you. Like even if you want to pretend it's because they think it's in somehow best interest for you, they're still choosing to lie to you. That has to matter for something.
It's not one issue. It's not 3 or 4 issues. It's that every time that we've needed Thomas for a vote, he has been completely unwilling to provide it.
I remember a question. Framing independent thought as challenging the party. Isn't that he's literally going, yes, that's what we do.
That is why the President of the United States has trained his ire on Thomas Massie. It's because we can never count on him for some of the most difficult votes.
Isn't that just exactly what we're saying? So you want someone who's going to do what you need him to do when you want it? I can't believe he just said that. I couldn't believe the first time I played it. Desperation, stupidity, you decide.
I wish that weren't the case. I say that as somebody who's known Thomas well before I got into politics, but politics is politics. And when you always vote against the party, you can't expect the party to actually back you.
Okay. Well, at some point, maybe Americans should realize that that's the reality of politics, like I've been saying my entire life, and that they don't care about you, they care about the team. And that one time somebody goes, well, I disagree. Well, you're out of the party. And they circle around the wagons and the team goes forward. The teams go forward. Well, here's one of these ridiculous people that wants to play the game, who, by the way, was just too incompetent than even the incompetent team to last out the team of incompetence. Think about how incompetent you have to be to not be able to hang with an incompetent team. That's pretty embarrassing. So here is that person who now jumps back into the podcast field, even though he was going to change the world and release the Epstein files, and now went on to just literally side with the team that covered all that up. I mean, you have to even ask yourself, how in the world this kind of person could have a successful podcast if you built the podcast on exposing these things and then continued it by saying, you're dumb for calling those things out? Well, because it's a dishonest thing we're dealing with here, guys. And whether we're talking about the mass of morons that will follow the team, that even if we're talking about 2%, we're talking about tons of people who will go subscribe or follow or buy anything that the team says to. That's some part of it. But you also, I think, have gaslighting, astroturfing, fake numbers, manipulation, AI stuff that make people like this, because of a political agenda, seem influential. Now you decide for yourself. All that's my opinion. The point is, here's what Dan Bongino was saying about Thomas Massie. This is MJ Truth posting this on the 18th. Here's the actual, let's see when date the exact show was. Came out May 18th. Here's what he had to say.
Difficult conversation for me because I really believed in this guy. I did. I supported him for a while, even when, him and President Trump butted heads. Been good on some issues.
There is something, this guy, just from the very beginning, before I even knew who he was or what party you thought he was, there's something about him that makes me uncomfortable. I'm just going to say it. It's personal. It has nothing to do with anything. I get a weird sense from this guy. It's his facial expressions, the way that he just seems like he's about to explode every moment. There's something weird there. Just my opinion.
But I'm going to tell you something. I have never been.
And by the way, just in case you want to make I've said similar things about Democrats, Republicans on all sides of the paradigm. So don't make it about a left-right thing about it. It's just, I mean, look at where I even paused it. There's something strange here. I'll let it go.
Been as disappointed in a human being in politics as I am in Tom Massie. I really believed in this guy. I did. I supported him for a while, even when, him and President Trump butted heads. Been good on some issues. But I'm going to tell you something. I have never been as disappointed in a human being in politics as I am in Tom Massie.
And why?
I largely stayed out of that race.
I mean, why though? Why? Because he didn't do what Trump said. That has to be the only thing, because he's voted in line with what you said you said you wanted, Dan, before you ended up in a position of power that you couldn't control, that you couldn't take. All right, think about that. Like, you look at what Massie's doing today. That's what Bongino said he wanted. Epstein files. I mean, you go through the list, guys. But now he's never been more disappointed. Yeah, because this is a complete fair weather follower. Somebody who will go along. I mean, you explain for me what I'm wrong about. If you wanted him then, and he did it, and now you're saying you're disappointed because he's a fraud, well, that can only mean that you're either can't remember what you wanted 30 seconds ago, or you're a hypocrite, and you don't want those things anymore because Trump said you're not supposed to want those things anymore.
Make too many comments on it. Because the people of Kentucky will choose who they want. If they want Tom Massie, I'm not a resident of that district. I live in Florida. You pick who you want. Got his opponent coming on in just a little bit, about an hour.
Oh, of course. As we bring on Ed to tell you why you should vote for him no matter what.
Some questions about some issues that matter to you, constitutional carry, Iran, NATO.
Right. All the things that if you actually dig deep enough, this person is a hypocrite. Like at the end of the day, somebody who will sell out the country but for foreign influence is not somebody you should trust on any matter, by the way.
However, when I got up there in that position, I could not believe what a fraud this guy was.
Don't expect any examples, by the way. This is a long trust me clip. I think he even says trust me.
I mean, like an epic level fraud. Whatever you think of this guy, I'm telling you, I have no dog in the fight. I supported him. He is an absolute fraud.
How?
Fraud.
I mean, certainly possible. Even I question that because of in other ways, like where this goes maybe in the next presidential election. But I question that for anybody. But I'd love to get into examples, like demonstrate how he was fraudulent.
He decided to do some money bomb thing and just completely BSing people.
What was that?
About my record there. Just lying to your face. I tried multiple times to get this guy to come over to give him a briefing on a case he kept bloviating about on Twitter, causing a serious problem, by the way. And I thought he believed in due process. He's supposedly a libertarian. Wants to try a case on X.
Are you seriously calling him coming to look at documentation that you wanted to show him due process? This has got to be one of the dumbest people that's ever been. I mean, this is the entire administration, guys. They don't even understand the things they claim to care about because they don't actually care about them, in my opinion.
And he didn't do it. I was there from March until January of this year.
I just can't even believe that.
You know how many times he came over to visit and ask about these cases despite multiple offers, cases he kept bloviating about? Well, we could have actually told him.
Now, really, what he's really talking about at the end of the day is the stuff that never actually happened. The stuff that Massie was Epstein files. That's one of the main things he's actually referring to. The one things that he was bloviating about that you guys never brought to the table.
Zero. And there's nothing he's going to tell you. All of his BS responses, his fake community notes, it's all of
his fake community notes. What are you even saying right there? Are you suggesting that Massie has the power to put community notes on your tweets? Why do people listen to these guys?
Distraction from the fact that he doesn't want to admit that he was offered a detailed briefing within certain parameters on these matters he's bloviating about on X in order to
I think that's his word of the day. What do you think?
Attack President Trump and others and due process. Could have cleared it up for him right away, and he just didn't want to do it because he.
Okay, what is he saying? Now, by the way, that's a low shot. I mean, I'm sure I do the same thing. Whenever words get stuck in your head, you say it all day long. But what's funny, though, is what he's talking about right there is come to us and let us explain to you why you're wrong. Are you serious? Like, he's just trying to make it sound like most of these guys act as if they're inherently honest because that's how they frame it, right? To everyone, we're the good guys. So we obviously we're going to be truthful. It's not true. First, on either count, that's not true. But what's funny is, so he's saying, come into the room and give us within certain parameters. Let us break down for you why what you think is wrong. Why would that even feel like? So Massie, by the way, what he said has been proven to be correct. You guys have been caught holding back material, holding back just conversations of how you conducted yourselves between Kash Patel and Bondi, most in particular, or rather in particular. I mean, anyway, the whole point is you're making a point right now that you can prove Massie was correct about.
Briefing within certain parameters on these matters he's bloviating about on X in order to attack President Trump.
Oh, he has me blocked, by the way, in case you guys didn't know that.
And others and due process. Could have cleared it up for him right away, and he just didn't want to do it because he preferred to be stupid.
Oh, is that what it was?
Nothing will change that. He'll try to distract you with his razzle dazzle.
He'll try to distract you with his razzle dazzle. What is this just Rocky? What are we talking about? You mean pointing out that you guys are, I actually genuinely don't even know what he's referring to. Razzle dazzle? You mean calling out the Epstein files that you failed to deliver? You mean pointing out that AIPAC is funding a U.S. politician? Yeah, razzle dazzle. Good God.
His bot army. Like we haven't been through this before.
You see, this is just lazy. Now, look, do I think that these people have, I'm willing to bet you that he says that it's because he probably utilizes some feature like that. Like people in this, remember the old things you used to be able to do to buy Twitter followers and whatever until Twitter basically I guess they claim they stopped doing that. Well, the point, like they, boxed that out or deleted the accounts that did so. Well, there's new versions of those things. You have to understand that, like way, way deeper AI stuff, but bots are like Ed Gallering got caught for using Twitter to make his own comments. Like it literally, one of his aides forgot to remove the Grok presentation. Here's a comment made in your style. And he posted that. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's just, at the end of the day, the idea that they use stuff like that we must be aware of that. But so for him to just argue that Massie's using bot armies, sure, I wouldn't deny the possibility, but all he's doing is trying to level these Democrat-style arguments, like as if what they claim Democrats do. I'll make a point about that from Trump in a second. And this is the best they can do. As if in any way, in any provable way, he aligns with the Democrat ideals. He clearly aligns with the conservative ideals. And so to call him, like Trump says, transgender for everybody, I mean, it's the laziest argument because you're hoping your followers are so stupid that they will simply go, oh, Massie wants transgender. He does not, by the way. Then I guess that I'll vote for Trump or Gallerain. I mean, if you're aiming at those people, you've lost. You must understand that out there. The average, anyway, I digress. The point is, this is the kind of thing that they eat up.
You think you're the first time we've entered into a primary and supported a candidate and had other people come in with the bots and the bullshit? What do you think? We're like newbies at this?
I guess his effort here is to try to make it sound like the people that clearly support Massie aren't real, which certainly ask that. But I mean, this is at a point when their own thing is imploding. I mean, you could read every post he puts out and half the comments of people going, you're a complete fraud. Not that that can prove anything, but just recognize that there's a huge portion of the conservative Republican dynamic that are not on the same side as each other. Most of which, by the way, all of which support Massie, which I find insanely clear. But overall, he's just trying to insinuate, by the way, without evidence, that was all bots. Now, I'm sure some of it was. I think all of them do that. I mean, I shouldn't say sure, but I would argue it's likely. But I think it's also very, very easy to see that he has a massive support background, which is why Trump tried to use him.
I promise I'll far outlast you. I promise. I've heard it all before. The guy is a fraud. Anyone telling you otherwise, including him, is lying. He did not want to know. He preferred to be dumb so he could plead ignorance on X and attack President Trump.
Right, to be dumb about the Epstein files is, I guess, what he's alluding to. I mean, do we all know where that ended up? I mean, there's no deviation within that. So all you're saying is that because he refused, or if based on your statements, did not go into your briefing, and that somehow proved that he wanted to remain ignorant about, I mean, I don't even understand how you feel like that's a solid argument. It could, I guess you could argue it might mean that. But other than that, we can look at how it ended and look back and recognize you failed to release all the documentation. You've covered up numerous parts of this. No one has been arrested. And somehow Massie's the one that remains ignorant. Pretty wild. Now, please don't take any of this as somehow defending of Massie. It's just defending of whatever. Like I just said the other day, if I feel you're being misrepresented, I don't care who you are. I will fight for you. That's important to me. As I jokingly said yesterday, there's even times where I've stood up and said Alex Jones is being misrepresented, even though I think he's ridiculous. And I think that's important to think about, that it matters to me that it's about what's right, what's correct, rather what's accurate, what's truth. So here, as he says all of that, here's Ann Coulter or plenty of other people that simply point this out. And it says, is there anyone with a room temperature IQ opposing Massie? Heritage Foundation scorecard, Massie gets 96% score compared to the average Republican of 89%. Well, here's a photo, a tweet of somebody that is like weirdly not there. Thank you, Twitter, from your weird algorithmic control stuff that you do. I wonder why that is. And this is, I always point this out. If she had not personally posted the link, which you don't always do, you just hit the share button, right? I wouldn't be able to see this. I would be like, what is that? I can't see it. And there's no way I could find it. Luckily enough, she had the link. So it's this person, Peter Schiff, is saying, Thomas Massie voted with Democrats to oppose Trump's Iran war. But had Biden started the same war, Massie would have voted with Republicans to oppose it. He's correct. At least based on his consistent record, he's correct. The difference is Massie votes his conscience and honors his oath to support the Constitution. Frankly, whether you agree that's his intention, that's what his actions show. And I'm just trying to be objective because, trust me, I'm always going to be skeptical of politicians, and I think we should be. The point is to stay, the statement is his actions back that up. They do. And this person says, BS, Massie votes with Democrats. And they're lying to you, guys. That's what's so insane. That's the lying fake MAGA movement right there. And so Ann Coulter, whatever you think about her, simply follows up and says, that's not true. Here is Donald Trump saying, horrible Congressman Massie, Thomas Massie, put out an old endorsement from many years ago of him by me long before I found out that he was the worst congressman in history of our country. Oh, is he? I endorse Ed Gallerine, a true American patriot. You know, if we're talking about the whole fake patriot, fake MAGA movement, then sure, which Massie knows full well. So the statement that he put out is fraudulent, just like he is fraudulent. What he was doing was showing you that what Trump said about him before Massie didn't just do whatever Trump told him to do. That's what he was doing. Withdraw your fake statement, Massie, right now. He's just trying to represent it the way he does, or maybe he's too dumb to realize what actually happened there. Mandy says, hey, Grok, if the U.S. Constitution was a person, which current representative would it be? Very concise, just the name. Representative Thomas Massie. He consistently votes to uphold limited government, individual rights, and constitutional constraints on federal power, often against both parties. I don't know how we can misunderstand this. Even if you think he's dishonest and this is all big play, what I'm highlighting here is that anybody honest, even these Elon Musk-controlled Grok platform, is telling you that Massie is one of the most consistent people in conservative Republican values and has consistently been has been the most consistent when it comes to aligning with the Constitution. And he just lost. And Israel made sure that happened. And the entire Trump administration and the morons like Dan Bongino you just heard are literally telling you this is the biggest win for America ever. How do you not understand what's happening? They are either that stupid, that controlled, that blackmailed, or just don't care about any of it. And they want you to believe that being anti-American is the only American thing you should care about. It's just insane. Now, it's insane even for me, for somebody who, I believe I'm telling you what I think. Every day I tell you my opinions and I show you what I think the facts show. But even I stand back and go, as I should, because I think it's my job to, am I missing something? Is this just me thinking? I mean, it's just unbelievable to me how clear this all is. Like I said, even if Massie is not real, even if he's just a player in all this, it still demonstrates for you that the people right now in the Trump administration, or I would argue rather the U.S. government, absolutely don't care about the things they claim they care about. And we just allowed a foreign government to put someone in positions of power. And I argue, hopefully we can stand back and go, oh, now I see all the rest of them too. You think this was the first one? No, this is the one they spent the most money on. So, on that note, Trump called a sudden urgent press conference. What followed was a fever dream. Now I'm going to skip the rest of it. There's other parts I would include, but the main point was, it's just dumb, funny stuff. It's just crazy. But his main point here, 5 minutes later, the poster was back. Basically, he went up and was like in the middle of all these important things and was like, let's talk about the ballroom. And the ballroom's great. And it was just weird and everyone made fun of it. But it says 5 minutes later, the poster was back on the easel with this, what they said it's going to look like. And by the way, everyone's aware that there's some weird like security thing, some bunker or whatever we're talking about. And that itself is denied, but it's like everyone knows about it. It's weird. But he says, ranting about one of his Republican foes, Massie. And he said, transgender for everybody. I just want you to see that. I mean, does he actually think that Thomas Massie, despite being explicitly against it, supports transgender? Or is he just lying to you to convince you that he likes Democrat things because he thinks you're that stupid? You should be insulted by that because he's either lying or not aware of it. And either way, that's pretty alarming. The Constitution noise reached a crescendo as he went into construction, excuse me, because the construction noise reached a crescendo as he went into a familiar rant about illegal immigration, and he was forced to shout, "We're taking in nobody," which actually isn't even accurate. He yelled, his hands flailing around, and the hammers and drills and digging equipment, blah, blah, blah. The point was, Massie is a Democrat, apparently. Now, this is today. A couple clips I'm going to play for you. There's a couple ways to look at all this, right? I mean, so he lost. So part of it is that just could have been what we sadly hope it wasn't. That's the honest person who lost and Israel pushed him out. Hey, I hope so. I hope not, because that's pretty damn alarming, but sadly, that's what it looks like. But at the same time, just because we're objective, and it doesn't mean you have to, it's not about, like if you want to, it doesn't mean like you have to take sides. Even if you believe in Massie, you should still, and I would argue as an honest person, if you think that's what he is, that he would expect this of you, that we question what he does and we hold his feet to the fire. And so now, if this is what we should be asking, rather, is whether or not this was sort of the way it was supposed to go, and that this is a plan to get this momentum going and to have him end up running for president. And it's all some dark horse thing. That's not, I'll be honest, that's not what I feel right now. That doesn't seem to line up with what I feel, but I've felt things wrong before, right? It's about the way, and by the way, the propaganda is definitely meant to make you feel a certain way, right? But all said and done, I think right now it feels like it's kind of obvious this was AIPAC removing somebody who was against their agenda. But he posted this: I lost the election, but we started a revolution. Keep the flame of liberty burning, my friends. I will continue to put people and principles before a party. I hope so. And I hope he is genuine. And I will continue to hope for that and continue to support actions he takes that align with those interests. But my point would be that you could see an interesting move here where this turns something like, I've often been worried about how they get away from the two-party illusion, because I know it's been failing, even if you guys can't see it. I think it's very obvious that it's starting to fail. So my point is that they need to reimagine that system. And that's not just about the control grid we're talking about, because I think that is a long-term plan, but that's not going to happen overnight. I mean, I hope not. And I hope it doesn't happen at all. But so this could be a potential point to roll that into some new, I don't know, third-party thing, something else. But it's all going to become more clear when the actions start, if they do. Like maybe he starts working with Elon Musk. Maybe he starts the America Party or whatever they talked about. And that would be interesting, right? But anyway, this is just a quick little thing. He shows you the people cheering for Massie. Now, Dan Bongino also said this. Turns out Jimmy, Dave, Igor, Ryan, by the way, he means Ryan Mata, by the way. It looks like people thought he meant me. The people, like two people have reached out and commented about how I got him wrong or something. And it's like, people that somehow, I guess, thought that we were supporting Massie the whole time, even though I've been explicitly saying the opposite about any of them. But weirdly enough, because, this is on a side note, as I always tell you guys, this is how people operate through this, is you get people out there who deliberately misinform others, even people that are like friends of ours. It's happened to me in the past, where suddenly someone becomes really cold with you and you find out way later that they were told by some commenter that I said X, Y, and Z about them and I actually didn't. Now, shame on them for blindly believing that, because I wouldn't do that. But my point is that it happens to us. And so it's funny that a lot of people who think that I'm somehow out there fighting for Massie and that challenges my principles because I've always said I wasn't going to, didn't happen. But I've got those emails from people like, how dare you, whatever. I just don't want to share this stuff with you, but it's just funny to me how people out there who even are honest people will be swayed because some other podcaster says they watched me do something and it didn't happen. By the way, on a good note to talk about that, I'm trying to set up a panel right now for the IMA that will include Catherine Austin Fitts and Whitney Webb, because they're two out of all of us that are being more than anybody impersonated right now on YouTube, on Twitter, and they let it happen, guys. And they're making money with these accounts. It's crazy. And so we want to set up an IMA panel about the kind of digital world and that dynamic, but also like with the impersonation in the digital world, deep fakes, the whole thing, and about how that's happening. And so I think it's an interesting overlap to all that. So look forward to that. I just reached out to Whitney and Catherine today, and they said they're down for it. But so he says, an assortment of Jew-hating life losers, disgruntled libs, sexual deviants, leg humpers, drunks, and failed comedians. I mean, he just thinks he's being funny. What you're doing as you try to frame this as some political thing. You are, disgruntled libs, sexual deviants. Who are you talking about, man? It's just this lazy attack is what it comes down to. The assortment of Jew-hating life losers. So it's not these people. I believe he means Jimmy Dore. I'm not sure, and I believe he means Dave Smith. The point is, Jimmy Dore, Dave Smith. Are you saying, is it not possible they just believed that Massie did the right thing? Think about how lazy it is to go, oh, they hate Jews because they supported Massie. Why? Because Israel didn't want him? I thought you guys told us that wasn't what happened right there. You see, they're not smart enough to realize that when they joke and they say these things, that they give insights into what they really think. And that's what it just showed you. If you're trying to tell us that it wasn't Israel that did this, then why would it be him supporting him would be Jew-hating? Explain that for me. Smart guy. It says our coalition for winning a conservative primary election in real life. Shocker. Basically saying that these people were all fake. See, Massie lost. Therefore, what we've been telling you is the truth. What a lazy way to look at the world. The reality is there's tons of other things that could have played, one of them being AIPAC lobbying and funding that pushed this in a direction away from what American people wanted. Isn't that what you guys keep telling us the Democrats always do? Through all sorts of mechanisms, but now it's just not possible because you got what you wanted? It's just so many ways that you could make fun of the lack of intellect in what they do. But overall, all of them are ridiculous because Massie didn't win. And he says, we didn't ask for this ideological war. An ideological war. So Massie's now framed. They're just so desperate to fold him into the left versus right paradigm. That's why Trump says transgender for everybody. Massie votes with Democrats. This is a campaign because each one of those claims are simply lies. And you can easily prove that they're lies. So when you say ideological war, what you're saying is left versus right, because Massie is not fighting an ideological war against you guys. He's fighting a principle war, a war of principles against you. And he goes, and they started it, and we finished it. Oh, you did? So you're telling me the war was about Massie winning or not? Matter of fact, we didn't even invite them to this party. They invited themselves, and then they sit SHIT in the punch bowl. And now they're playing dumb as to what we threw. I mean, it's just this is, I don't know, it's not even worth reading. This is his like lazy tough guy act, like, and as I always say, guys, the people that act like this, they're usually the weakest one in the room. And I don't even mean strength, but I mean weakness in a lot of different ways, who has to constantly, I'm the tough one and you better not, or I'm going to punch you, kind of lazy things. It's pretty embarrassing. But overall, all you're trying to do, take your 1940s, basically saying it's all an illusory thing, that what they're doing is radical libs coming to manipulate you. Just, my God. Is anybody actually falling for this? I mean, look, it got 1.4 million views, but if you read the comments, and that's why I think he stopped the comments, is it just everyone's making fun of him? Slow news day. Cites what Sam Tripoli said and says, sorry, but the dude is way too happy after getting his political career snuffed out by a foreign lobby. Way too happy. Right? Skepticism. What he says is, I would have come sooner. I think I've got it right here.
All right.
Oh, it's this one.
So our job, and I'm not going to make any announcements tonight. I'm going to go back, have me a medical margarita. I'll hang out and party with you all. You know I don't drink recreationally. I have medical margaritas. I even have a medical margarita card. But what happened today, what happened tonight was God's will. And we have to figure out what was the purpose of having the biggest fight ever. Biggest fight ever. Why did it converge on one of 435 congressional seats right here in Kentucky? What was God's purpose? What is he showing us tonight? We're just getting started. I like that.
I can see a world in which you can recognize incredible momentum and be happy about that. Like, just to look at it from both sides. Like, one side of it is, I agree with what Sam is saying. It seems a little bit weird that they seem like ecstatic about the way this went. But looking at the other way, if you want to try to make sense of it, you could argue that this is easy. Like, what he recognizes right now is the presidency next time. It's you could look at it that way, and that wouldn't even be dishonest, because it seems pretty clear he's got crazy momentum. Also, to make fun of what Dan and everyone else is saying, it's obvious that he's got a crazy amount of support, which then should make you doubt whether Ed has any support. Now, one of the things you're seeing right now from a lot of these, like Alex Jones, for example, is out there breaking down how it looks like it was stolen, that Ed actually stole it, that Israel got involved and stole it for him. Was probably the case. Just don't expect any genuine reporting coming from that, people, because ultimately this seems like a way to get you thinking that they're breaking down people that have been lying to you about what the Israel's been doing, like all through Gaza, all through all this, who suddenly want to make this case, just be skeptical, okay? Hey, but always, like I said, maybe he suddenly sees it and he decides to turn a new leaf. I guess my own advice, we have to hope for that. And, look for that opportunity to see that he's doing what he believes in all of a sudden, but I don't think that's what's happening. My point is that even people like Alex Jones and the rest are now saying that Israel stole this from Massie. I just think it's hilarious to stand back and look at how that makes sense with what he's been telling you, how he got Trump elected. It's just crazy. But generally speaking, though, I think it's worth considering, with what all we can see now, that there was an obvious travesty of, whatever. What do you want to call? I don't believe we live in a democratic society. I think that's pretty obvious. In fact, it's more of an oligarchy. But whatever you want to call this process, it was a bastardization of that process. I think that's pretty obvious. I don't think this was the right clip, by the way. I think the other one was right, but we'll finish this one out.
What happens in 2028? You want me to run for Congress again? I don't know what you're talking about. All right, well, you've made a compelling argument. You spoke your piece, but I need a medical margarita right now. And we'll talk about it later. Thank you and God bless. All right. Listen, I would have come out sooner, but I had to call my opponent and concede, and it took a while to find Ed Galrine in Tel Aviv. I did get the call through, though. I have called and conceded the race. We've been honorable the whole time, and we're going to stay that way.
Now, again, whether or not you think he's honest, you could argue that being, following through has been the play to get you to trust him. I agree with his statement. Just to be objective, seeing it like that, he has been consistent the entire time. I haven't seen him do anything that challenges what he said he was going to do. Doesn't mean we trust him. Doesn't mean, and there's valid points to be worried about in, funding elements, like all of them, by the way, which is why we should question every one of them and always hold their feet to the fire. Like, for example, let's say he runs for president and it gets elected, and then the first thing he does is initiate some war. Well, then we'll very easily understand that he was always lying. But that doesn't seem to line up for me right now. And so let's hope for the best. But at the end of the day, right now, I sense that I understand the concern there with how this feels, but I just recommend, just as always, to be objective, question it, and wait to see what happens next. Because I think right now, the focal point should be on the fact that AIPAC literally funded this guy into power, and that the administration lying about Massie, whatever you think about him, to do it. And then, we'll be focusing on Massie, and as this, whatever his next political thing is, we'll be paying attention to it. But until then, we're here now, and let's recognize what's happening here and how obvious this is. And I think that's the important thing to see.
Welcome to the most expensive congressional primary ever in the 250-year history of this country. It's not just the most expensive. This thing went on longer than Vietnam. It started 9 months ago, and they didn't even have a candidate, and they decided they want to take me out.
That's just crazy. And they did. You know what I mean? Like and this is a guy that didn't do any debates. Literally, his thing was that Trump supported him and that AIPAC funded him. That's it. And he won. That's got to be pretty damn alarming for those of us that understand what's happening and that have been seeing this and been documenting this, whether or not you believe in Massie is my point, guys. And so anyway, so Sam says he's too happy. I mean, I agree, but I could see a world in which it makes sense that he recognizes a bigger political future, right? Because effectively you'd be in Congress while you would be, well, no, I guess it would have been right now. No, he would have been like, if he ran to 2028, no, even that, I guess. When is the next one? No, it's close. Either way, we'll have to wait and see what he ultimately does next. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that he's going to roll this into a presidency, or at least try. And here's what Steve said. We've been highlighting what appears to be the playbook on AIM Wake Up. Massie loses, and he has been saying this, by the way, runs in 28, splits the GOP with Peter Thiel's rent boy, Newsom, which I don't agree with the point of Newsom there. I do see what he's saying, though. His argument is that it's going to be a left-right thing, which he and I and a lot of us have been watching, like I either that or a like a third party push that's also false. That's what I thought Elon was going to do. They're just trying to find ways to keep the same old party going, guys. That's what I think is happening. But either way, his argument, which does make sense, if you bring in the both sides of it, that would, unity party, whatever. And Walz is into the White House to manage Project 2030. I guess we'll see, right? Mark the note. We'll see what happens. Now, on the current reality, I thought this was interesting. Well, actually, one more thing on this. Arnaud Bertrand writes this in regard to the same post of Massie. Never has it been clearer that the U.S. is a plutocracy, specifically plutocracy governed by the wealthy, which oligarchy is, kind of a similar point, but it's more about the wealth, like the business oligarchy leading, like this more so being government, like the literal government is the wealthy. It's a small deviance, but overall point is I think plutocracy, oligarchy, authoritarian dictatorship, whichever one. I think I shouldn't even laugh. I think that's what we're dealing with at the end of the day. Ruled by executive order. And ironically, he writes, a plutocracy doesn't even represent the interest of its own oligarchs, but those of a foreign ethno-religious state. Interestingly, Massie was one of the only congressmen with a genuine engineering background. He studied at MIT and founded a pioneering haptic interface company from scratch that obtained 24 patents. And that's, I think, where most of his wealth comes from. He says, quote, China is run by engineers. America is run by lawyers. He says, well, look at what happens when an engineer tries politics in the U.S. Well, that statement I found very alarming, to be honest. What does a country run by engineers represent? Guys, that's the literal original definition of a technocracy. Or rather just the experts, which included engineers. So call me crazy. Maybe I'm jumping at shadows, but I just thought that was interesting. And the point being is that we're kind of referencing where the aiming where we need to go. I don't know, just worth pointing out. And I'm for especially those new to the show, when I make these points, I think they're fascinating. It's something you put aside, you keep an eye on. And at the moment, it's not even suggesting I actually think that's what it means, but it could. We'll find out down the line. That's what it looks like to question everything. Now, this is from Responsible Statecraft. AIPAC takes out Israel lobby critic, Thomas Massie. Thomas Massie lost his bid for re-election to primary opponent Ed Gallerine 54% to 45%. I always love those neat little numbers, with nearly all votes counted on Tuesday night. Well, here's an interesting point that I want to play for you just to bring this back around. This is even MSNBC. And what we're talking about is the fact that it's been a public and open conversation that this very time frame is where AIPAC was going to turn this into something more than just lobbying. I mean, literally, that's what the clip I'm going to play for you right now. And that's what we just saw, at least what it looks like.
American Israel Public Affairs Committee. It was incorporated in 1963. For 10 years prior to that, it was known as the American Zionist Committee for Public Affairs.
That's the name. Look it up, even on Wikipedia, and you'll find the obvious evidence. I've done like 4 different segments on this, that was a group created by Israel that just simply got renamed and repurposed. Oh, look, just like everything else Israel does. New shell companies that we control, like you just heard.
AIPAC calls itself America's pro-Israel lobby, and according to its website, it has over 3 million members across the country in regional chapters working to, quote, expand and strengthen the U.S.-Israel relationship, end quote. You may know AIPAC as being one of the biggest and most recognizable donors to many of the members of Congress in your state. But contributing to campaigns is a relatively new function of the organization. Before 2021, AIPAC did not endorse candidates nor give political contributions. Its focus was on lobbying elected officials, not actually electing officials. But in a dramatic shift in policy, AIPAC began directly funding candidates and spending big on races in 2021.
Now, what he's highlighting is a dramatic turn. Now, as you're going to hear as it goes through this clip, is what we're talking about from basically the last time frame to right now. Now, just think about that point, though. I mean, even the way that they're covering it is frustrating me, because this should be like a jaw-dropping story. You're talking about let's just even decouple Israel from it, which you can't, but let's just pretend it's a NRA, whatever. And they are directly funding candidates. That's a crime as far as I'm concerned. What we're talking about is lobbying is supposed to be money that goes to politicians because they support the politician, not because they have something they're asking for. And that the idea is we believe in what you're going to do. And that ultimately, hopefully, that getting that person in power because he aligns with your ideals will then help what you want because you already agree on, sir. But that's not how it works. I mean, even that is so shockingly naive to think it ever worked like that, but that's how they frame it. And so now what we're talking about is just removing the mask and having AIPAC come out and say we're directly funding into people's hands prior to elections to make sure that they can win that election. Because look, at the end of the day, isn't that what it really was? I agree. Yes. But now it's becoming clear, and it's coming directly from Israel. And they're just going, we're buying seats in Congress. And, on top of all of it, the point was never supposed to be that money just bought politics. But some of us have always known that. I mean, you can go back to years ago and find that I think the stat was like 96% of the time, 92%, I forget, that the person who spends the most money wins. So it's kind of always been that way. But I just think that's fascinating and alarming that it's been documented by our corporate media even saying, here they are deciding we're going to just start funding politicians. And nobody seemed to care about that. I think you kind of know why, don't you?
AIPAC Political Action Committee, AIPAC-PAC, filed something called a Statement of Organization with the FEC just in time for the 2022 election cycle, where it spent $50 million, including both direct contributions to candidates and outside spending like TV advertisements. According to AIPAC, it donated money to 365 candidates from both parties, including every single member of both Democratic and Republican leadership in Congress. 109 Republicans who voted against the certification of the 2020 presidential election in America received campaign contributions from AIPAC. All in all, AIPAC gave money to 342 members of the 118th Congress.
Again, as always, they fund all of them, left and right, everyone they can. I don't know why that's confusing to people, guys, because it's not about them. It's not about choosing a team or a side. It's about controlling American politics.
The 2022 elections were the most expensive midterms in American history, with a total cost of $8.9 billion spent. Now, last year, AIPAC ranked 15th in total expenditure by a political action committee, according to data collected by Open Secrets. But take a look at the other funders that AIPAC is competing against for that title. Act Blue and Win Red. They are Democratic and Republican Party machines. Save America is Donald Trump's money-raising operation. The Conservative Club for Growth, Emily's List, focuses on electing Democratic women to office. All of the PACs on this list are massively domestic-focused ideological machines. AIPAC is the only organization in the top 20 whose interests are focused entirely on America's relationship to a foreign government. Now, let's take a look at who benefits from AIPAC's largesse. Here are the top 20 recipients in Congress, the House and the Senate, of AIPAC money in the 2022 midterm cycle, according to Open Secrets. They're members of both parties. They come from every corner of the country with varying levels of experience in Congress. The Democrat Glenn Ivey of Maryland tops the list. He beat out fellow Democrat Donna Edwards in Maryland's House primary after AIPAC poured millions into pro-Ivey advertisements and mailers. Edwards was running for a second stint in Congress after serving during the Obama administration, where she voted present, not even a no, on a number of pro-Israel resolutions. So the money poured in against her. Not even an endorsement from Nancy Pelosi could save her. Michigan Democrat Haley Stevens unseated Democratic Representative Andy Levin. Here's what Levin had to say about that.
I'm really Jewish, but AIPAC can't stand the idea that I am the clearest, strongest Jewish voice in Congress, standing for a simple proposition that there's no way to have a secure democratic homeland for the Jewish people unless we achieve the political and human rights of the Palestinian people.
Oh, and look at that. Okay, so now you have a Jewish person, not a Zionist, a Jewish person who recognizes that Palestinians deserve life too, like every human being, and Israel makes sure he loses, which is what happens. So as always, it's not about Jewish, it's about Zionism, it's about influence of politics. And that's the whole point, guys. It's, this anytime, and you'll see this everywhere, including, Orthodox Jewish communities that get beat up in the streets of Tel Aviv because they protest Zionism. It's not hard to see if you pay attention. And that's all he's saying, is that he is a Jewish congressman who ultimately got forced out by AIPAC money because he cared about something that AIPAC and Israel did not. Human life.
AIPAC spent $4 million against Levin. He lost by 20 points. When Michigan Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, the only Palestinian American in Congress, was censured by the House in early November over what some lawmakers called her rhetoric around the Israeli-Hamas war, 22 Democrats joined Republicans in that censure vote.
Now, what's interesting on that, which did happen, and it very well could be that they can't control everything, and she got in, whatever, and ultimately that they're trying to attack her for it. But what matters to me is that when it comes down to it, and there's votes for Israel war stuff, they always side with Israel. You may not recognize that. Look back. It's always about, oh, well, Israel's bad, but Iran war is important, or, whatever that kind of nonsense is. AOC, the whole thing. Now, there's deviations, and I tend to recognize those as times when it was going to pass anyway, my personal opinion. I'm jaded when it comes to government. Don't always have to follow my lead. I just think that's obvious, in my opinion, that when you look at the long track record, that even these people who frame themselves as being against that, they seem to, vote to fund Israel, vote to send weapons to Israel, whether for Ukraine, any number of discussions, guys. That matters to me. And so I guess the question is whether they actually are what they represent themselves as, or just another plant. I'm not saying I know for a fact, just always question that.
18 of those Democrats received campaign funds from AIPAC in 2022, totaling more than $1.1 million. By the way, for these 6 of them, AIPAC was their top contributor. A growing list of progressive lawmakers who are vocal in their criticism of the government of Israel and its policies and their support for Palestinian self-determination have inspired AIPAC to spend even more. As progressive lawmakers began calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, Slate reported that insiders expect AIPAC's 2024 spending to hit $100 million. In fact, United Democracy Project, which is a pro-Israel super PAC affiliated with AIPAC, is already spending money on attack ads against Democratic Representatives Jamal Bowman of New York and Summer Lee of Pennsylvania. Lee has already got a primary challenger, as do Cori Bush and Ilhan Omar. Pro-Israel donors have already signaled that they are eager to primary Rashida Tlaib and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Congresswoman Lee already overcame AIPAC's financial influence against her once. She tweeted criticisms of Israel's treatment of Palestinians in 2021, but as a candidate, she affirmed Israel's right to exist. But that's not good enough.
Wow.
AIPAC spent nearly $3 million in the primary alone to defeat Lee, and they almost did. She beat Stephen Irwin, who is 3rd on the list of money given to candidates by AIPAC in 2022, by less than 1,000 votes. And if Congresswoman Lee wants to keep her seat in 2024, she's going to have to do it all over again.
Now, guess how much they spent this time? $28 million. 2025, 2026. $28 million. Think about the increase to what he was saying. I mean, you can't miss what's happening. And clearly it's working if they got what they wanted. Now, Derek adds a good point to this that I think is worth your consideration, and I agree with him. I get why people want to see. Look, as I said, there's nothing wrong with hoping that these people are going to be what they say they're going to be, while you're questioning that and being critical of them. And it was just, you could maybe argue that's what he's doing. But Dave Smith comes out and says, if Massie loses tonight, he should run for president. If Massie wins tonight, he should run for president. Okay, and it is interesting. Look, this is the Libertarian Party saying keep selling false hope rather than finding real solutions. Interesting. Now, here's what Derek said. More energy into a failed and rigged political system? Question mark. Right? So I get that people don't always agree with that. I agree with that. I think you can literally prove that's the reality, that our voting does not translate to the outcome, and these things have been stolen from us, left and right. It's not one side. Seeing as how they all use the same machines back and forth over and over, and they all criticize back and forth. Like, don't we catch on to that little trick? Wouldn't they not want to use those? It's so silly how obvious all this is. The point is that if it's a failed and rigged political system, then maybe we should go, let's not just look for the next political person. This is so hard for people to, I've had this conversation so many times. As we can go, like, you'll talk to most Republicans, they'll tell you Democrats will steal the elections. They'll cheat, whatever. You talk to Democrats, say the same thing about the other side. And a lot of people in between look at it and see, yeah, they all seem to cheat. But even those people in between, you can ask a lot of them and say, okay, if you know that, then what are you going to do next time? Vote. It's like, well, wait a minute. You just explained to me that you understand that the voting system is broken. Well, what else are we going to do? And that blows my mind that that's the answer. It was like, okay, so we can walk through, and even they can agree with me that the system is utterly broken and does not even translate to the outcome. And then because, well, what else are you going to do? Your answer is to vote anyway? I'm just like, gosh, that's like a social engineering problem, because at the end of the day, you just admitted you're going to do what you know doesn't work. How can that be the answer? Now, again, that's for those that think that way. Maybe you disagree. My point is to consider if you think it's even manipulated. which I think we all can acknowledge it is, right? Whether it's money or gerrymandering or, whatever you want to talk about, that we know that's the case. So wonder whether or not leaning into that system is the answer. Maybe a lot of people seem to think that, but we've been on this hamster wheel a long time and it just seems to keep getting worse. So all I want to think about or ask people, is there another path? Look to Derek's work. Look to a lot of people's work. Look to Matthew Sands and his, hold on, I'll grab it. Was it Matthew Sands? I'm forgetting his name. Dang it. I got to follow up with him. Let me do this. Hold on. I'll grab this for you since I did think it's a good point, and I'm frustrated that I can't remember off the top of my head. It's an interview we talked about the non-aggression principle. And my point was just there's lots of people out there who have a lot of good ideas. So there's no shortage of different things that might work. That wasn't his last name. God, I'm really frustrated by that right now. Somebody in the chat remind me. That's so frustrating. Now I can't remember. See if that works. Otherwise, I'll move on. Somebody in the chat remind me. It was a good conversation. No. Oh, well. I'll try to include it if I remember what its last name was. But the overall point was that there's people that have good ideas, that might very well be a potential path forward. And so overall, we should consider that. And he says that's the best solution people like Dave Smith can put forward. And he says this is exactly what I was talking about yesterday about Massie being the new political savior. Rebel against the system. And see, even if you believe Massie genuinely believes in what he's saying, I still argue it's the wrong thing to do to put your hopes in yet another political person. Because my point is always is that the system, I did that, that the system, the idea is that ultimately, where was I? I just distracted myself. That the system is broken in such a way that even if you believe what you're doing, it's designed so that person can't actually be effective. And we all seem to see that. And so he says, this is the problem. When will Dave and others finally accept that politics isn't the answer? But here, it's important to point out, though, that maybe Dave disagrees with that. So it's just because we disagree doesn't mean that what he's saying is dishonest. But a lot of people seem to see it that way because I agree with Derek. It's pretty obvious. And I think Dave's a smart guy and can understand that these things, Matthew Sands, it was Matthew Sands. I thought so. Somebody in the chat just commented that. Hopefully that pops up. Well, let me see. Oh, somebody found it. There it is. It's the Nations of Sanity Project. Thank you for posting that. I just found it. Here it is. This is worth your time. I mean, I argue that it's not feasible, but it's not about one or all or nothing. There's many different parts of this can come together. Nations of Sanity interview, the non-aggression principle, peace agreement. It's a good conversation. And I'm critical. I'm trying to poke holes in it. We're having a good conversation about it. I think it does well. So my point is that we shouldn't be seeking a political savior, even if you think he means what he's saying, right? If you feel you want to vote, if you feel him being president will change everything or maybe make a difference, then by all means, get involved. Do what you think is important. Just don't make that the only thing you do. I'm frankly of the mind that it's the least effective thing you could possibly do. Maybe you disagree. But just recognize that this cycle has been going on a long time, and people that are telling you Massie's the next one were telling you Trump was the next one. Dave included, by the way. And yes, he has come around and said that he regrets it, and he now turns on Trump. But now that he's going, Massie might be the guy, we should go, well, maybe, ask that. And I'm not even suggesting dishonesty. I just think it's about, most people are trapped in this. So it's not even something that you're embarrassed by. Everybody at one point was lost in this dynamic. And I think, as always, I could be wrong too. Now, to finish this up, I'm not going to go into this in depth because it's horrible. Like probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to read, quite frankly. And this is what Robert put out today. Israel revives October 7th hoaxes to cover up its mass rape of Palestinians. Now, you guys already know what this is about because I've touched on this, the New York Times story. I even wrote in here as an asterisk, this article contains extremely graphic and detailed descriptions of sexual violence, rape, sexual torture, and physical abuse against detainees and civilians. It includes explicit victim testimonies and accounts of trauma that may be highly disturbing or distressing for many readers. And I've never put that in an article before. So I'm not going to get into it in depth. But it says, just as the New York Times finally reports on Israel's mass rape of Palestinians, they put an entire article about the why people remain silent about the rape of Palestinians. And it says, after the years of silence around it, The corporate media have joined forces with Tel Aviv to push long-debunked hoax material about sexual violence on October 7th. This conveniently comes as Israel threatens to break the Gaza ceasefire. Now, it goes into some horrifying detail. I mean, like horrifying detail of people that suffered horrifying situations at the hands of people that we know it took place. We have photographs, video of it, of them literally shielding with their own literal shields how they raped somebody in the said Yemen torture camp, and then went and defended that act, protested for why Israelis have the right to rape Palestinians. Every time we say that, I feel like people out there think that's hyperbolic. It's not. They had literal mainstream broadcasts about why and debates about why it was their right to rape Palestinians. They literally stormed the locations of these places and police stations for that protest. There's links to all of it. It's very easy to prove. And so the point is that they come out with this fake discussion, literally citing things that have been debunked even by the people who started the argument. And did this through every platform. Even the New York Times put out a story of these hoaxes after they put out the story revealing the facts. Horrifying. It shows you what's happening today. So I hope you will read this, and I hope you'll understand, as we've been highlighting, that people like this have been pushing these same false stories. And the bigger point to make is that the article that came out through Daily Mail and New York Post, which was entitled Hamas Forced Sex Between Family Members on Part of October 7th Torture Campaign, Probe Finds, You Hear the Screams. You know what they're referencing? The same probe that goes all the way back to the very beginning of this, and the same probe that has been proven to be full of lies, even by the United Nations. That's my point. Nothing new happened. They just rehashed the same old lies after the New York Times proved they were doing something. How do you not see what that shows you about Israel's influence through these platforms? And it could even be just through shame and threatening racist anti-Semitism allegations. Who knows? Or people in positions who do what they're told. It's just disgusting what's happening. And this is what they come out and do on the 12th. The Israel Foreign Ministry says these are our values, and shows these pictures of these Israeli elements who are literally there force. What we're talking about, guys, are the flotilla people that they kidnapped, who weren't breaking the law, who were there trying to feed Gaza people, and they kidnapped them and then tortured them in many cases. And I'll show it to you. And then they put out videos of them trying to give people water while they're doing this and say that these are our values. So this is my point, guys. It's like the worst of the worst are the people who pretend that what they're doing is the best thing in the world while they're being the worst. The rapers and torturers who go, look at how good we are. And I'm not talking about every Israeli or every Jew. I'm talking about the people in the Israeli government and all those who support it. And this is what we're talking about. And so I just simply posted, no, these are your values, and highlighted this discussion. But here's what's more disgusting is you can prove this, because what they did is on the record. And even people in the Israeli government have called them out for it. Gideon here said, you deliberately caused damage to this state, the Israeli state, and this disgraceful performance, and not for the first time. Here he is laughing as they walk through that room where they're pretending they're helping everybody. And one of these women who was on the flotilla says something about free Palestine, and they force her to the ground and drag her out. Now, actually, first, let me show you what they did to these people. Well, they kidnapped them. Look at how they're treating them. Zip ties, and these are not criminals. And guess what they usually argue? These are Irish Americans. Now realize what we're talking about are people that they claim, well, we're protecting them. That's what they usually argue, right? Because they've got no legal justification to take people from international waters. Neither does the U.S. government, by the way. And they don't have a legitimate reason to treat them like criminals, because what they're claiming what they are doing is bringing food to people in Gaza. And so Israel pretends they're not starving people in Gaza, right? So they don't have a legal or even a rational justification for why they treat these people like criminals. So what do is they pretend they're rescuing them because, well, we're in the middle of a war. We can't just let them fly in here with a boat. And so they rescue them and then put them in handcuffs and beat them and starve them, which happens every time. In fact, I've had this doesn't like give you that much detail, but let me see if I still have it. Yep, there it is. This guy is a veteran of the USS Liberty. He was on a previous flotilla where the Israeli government kidnapped him, and he's a U.S. citizen. He spent months in prison in Israel, and your government never even said his name out loud.
Israel Matters. I'm an American on the 2018 Freedom Flotilla in its effort to break the blockade of Gaza. If you're watching this, we've been intercepted by the Israeli occupation forces and are being forced against our will to go to Israel. Please contact your representatives in Congress and the State Department and have them demand for Israel to have our immediate release.
Amazing how American government didn't care about that American citizen being taken by a foreign government for doing something that was a humanitarian act as they help him, you know? And by the way, for the chat, I absolutely oppose authority. That's the entire point. The idea is I question things. If I don't know something, I won't say I know something. But the idea is about authority in a general sense. That's the entire premise of what I'm talking about. Authority is something that exists, but you don't get to just declare that you have authority over me. So absolutely, I oppose the authority of the U.S. government in every possible way, in every way, shape, and form. The point is about understanding that when situations come out, that we just don't jump down the assumption rail, right? We are objective. We have to be, because it's in our interest to be today. But in this case, guys, we're talking about this American being kidnapped. Now, that was, I don't want to get the date wrong, a while ago. And so here is another example of what they do to American citizens. Okay, so here what I'm showing you is Ben-Gvir saying, "Welcome to Israel," and posting this video. She says, "Free Palestine." And so they drag her out, and Ben-Gvir comes smiling over, laughing about it. Look at that. Look what he posted this. You realize what he's posting is a bunch of citizens from around the world who weren't breaking the law. And he laughs, says, "Welcome to Israel." Handcuffs, bent over. That's torture. That's Guantanamo Bay kind of stuff, guys. That's not a joke. Playing music for them. Look at this. Where are these people? Where are the governments? Where's the American government? In fact, I think the Irish government has some words. My point, though, is there's no misunderstanding what they're doing. They think they can get away with this, and they usually do. And this is an Israeli, this is the Minister of Foreign Affairs for Israel, saying, "You squandered enormous professional and successful efforts made by many people, from IDF soldiers to Ministry of Foreign Affairs employees and many other fine individuals. You know you are not the face of Israel." He's saying you deliberately caused damage. Now, just so you understand my opinion, all he's really saying is you're too obvious with what you're doing. I really believe that. It's the whole mafia of self-enforcement. Ben-Gvir shows you what they are too obviously. And so he's going, you're damaging us. You squandered our efforts by killing all the Palestinians. I mean, really think about what he's saying right there. But either way, Ben-Gvir responds and says, "There are those in government who still haven't figured out how to behave towards supporters of terrorism." This is what Trump sounds like, guys. Why do you think that is? Because you're just calling Americans, Antifa, just terrorists? Maybe, if you want to argue they've committed the act of terrorism. But people saying you're a terrorist because you have a certain political opinion, excuse me, is just insane. It's where the country has gotten to. It's the whole free speech point. They're creating a world in which they can label you something and which has very legal, in their world, very serious legal consequences if they just argue you did or said a wrong thing. And this is what Ben-Gvir is saying. This is how you have to treat supporters of terrorism. Well, are they? Or are they people trying to feed people you're starving, who you then frame as terrorists, just like Trump is doing? Israel's foreign minister is expected to understand that Israel stopped being a pushover. Oh, so apparently it looks like breaking international law, violating human rights? Yep, just ask Trump and Hegseth. Anyone who comes to our territory to support terrorism and identify with Hamas will get slapped, and we won't turn the other cheek. Making a knock towards Christianity. Funny how many Christian rights support this guy. So here is another one saying, as an Israeli, he's the editor-in-chief of the Jerusalem Post. He says, "I am truly ashamed and disgusted by what Ben-Gvir, what his pathetic, childish stunt. The humiliating way he filmed and mocked detainees is a national disgrace. This is not Israel. It's damaging our soldiers and our country, not in our name." I flatly disagree with that. Maybe he thinks that. But I mean, really? You mean aside from the 95 times I've seen that happen all across your military, the entire time you've been genociding multiple countries? Sorry if I don't take that seriously, but a lot of them are angry because Ben-Gvir is making it too obvious. That's what I think. But these are innocent people. One of them, the sister of the president of Ireland. And how much you want to bet? Nothing happens. Dr. Margaret Connolly, the sister of the president of Catherine Connolly, is among the number of Irish citizens who were detained in that group you just saw, being treated like terrorists and being tortured. after a Gaza-bound aid flotilla was intercepted in the middle of the ocean, which, by the way, is also a crime. Think how crazy that is. Imagine if this was Trump's sister. Do you think that would matter? It certainly would to him, but it wouldn't be about anybody else, in my opinion. But just recognize that they look away. They don't care about international law. Mohammed Shihada says, don't let them fool you. Ben-Gvir is not an outlier. And I agree with him. Here's Miri Regev, one of Netanyahu's closest ministers, parading tortured activists like some captured animals. Her clip didn't get much attention, though, so no one in Israel's condemning her. You see his point? Same thing. She's laughing and pointing to it. But you see, Ben-Gvir made too much attention. Yes, and that's what matters. Their only problem with Ben-Gvir is his video went viral. They don't give a damn about torturing and beating, humiliating. I know, I would argue there's clearly people in Israel, and even some that are on the sides of the government, at least, that express concern about this. There's ones that have been dragged out of the Knesset. Who's to say if they're honest? But the larger point is that it's very clear there's a growing number of people in Israel who aren't okay with this. Now, I can't speak to the percentage, and I think it's pretty obvious the majority in Israel, for whatever reason, support this kind of stuff. That matters. But it's important to point out those that don't, including the Orthodox Jewish communities who stand up and scream about how wrong all this is. And there's many of them. There's groups that we point out often, and I've played you clips of them getting beat up by the IDF for speaking about it. Now, Tucker weirdly went on, or interestingly rather, went on Israeli TV. I found what he said interesting. Now, what the other guy says, just already ahead of it, by the way, is chock full of flat misrepresentations. But I found it interesting. I'm curious what you think about it. Here's what he said.
States would cave in to Iran terror regime that controls now also the Hormuz pathway and the terror ring that it created in the Middle East, maybe it would be even worse for any citizens in the world, not only in Israel, but also in the United States. And this is exactly what Donald Trump said. He said that the United States would have been in danger. So you don't believe Donald Trump?
I don't believe Donald Trump.
I think he thought that was some kind of gotcha moment, which is funny.
And I also think, as an Israeli, you should pause before using the phrase terror regime, since you live in a country that just murdered thousands of children in Gaza. We should all pull back a little bit on the rhetoric that.
Now, what do you think? Like I said, I at least have some level of hope that he genuinely sees it now and is going to call it out, and Tucker is suddenly going to be a real. Who knows? I doubt that. I have a very strong feeling that this is more. But it's you got to leave it open for that. But what I sense from a lot of them, some of them are definitely not going to aren't genuine. I think it's about recognizing the opportunism of where the reality of the world is going, are doing stuff like this to get the right kind of people to say, oh, he is on our side, right? And to support him, knowing that seems to where the momentum is going. I've been saying that since the beginning of this administration. I think everyone's starting to recognize the momentum has been there for a long time, and it's not in the direction of the political sides. And so right now, that seems to be an effort to throw that out there, but it could be real. What do you think? I'm glad he's saying it either way, because it's a moment you don't often see, and he's he's stating something that we know is true. And here's how he responds.
I also think, as an Israeli, you should pause before using the phrase terror regime, since you live in a country that just murdered thousands of children in Gaza. We should all pull back a little bit on the rhetoric that. I'm not defending Iran, but I'm just saying
even the fact that you want
regime,
me
it's a little hard to hear that from an Israeli right now, I have to say.
That you want me to make an equation between
same old thing. There's no equivalency between, there is though. The law is the law. You guys are that bad at this. There's no equivalence between Iran and what are you talking about? So you killed children, and it's okay because you're Israel, but Iran didn't do that, and they're bad though because they're Iran? Yes, we get your ridiculous argument. There is equivalence because the law applies to everybody. But see, herein lies the problem, which we'll point to in a second. I've showed you many times. Israel doesn't believe that. And it's not an opinion. They've stated it, and they've argued it, and they've made legal statements. It's, again, like every other thing we always point out from Israel that's very obvious and easy to prove that nobody seems to believe. We'll get to it in a second.
Democratic government that's acting, maybe not to your taste, but from self-defense.
Did he literally just talk about to your taste in referring to killed children? God, these people are monsters.
A terror regime in Iran that is terrorizing its own citizens, that hanging people, gay people from cranes with Islamic extremist shah.
Now, look, there's points you could argue things in the past. The reality of most of the things they point to happened when the Shah was in power. Easy to look up. But overall, I'm not defending the Iranian government. I think they're a government, and I don't support any government. But at the end of the day, like I said, if you're being misrepresented, I will stand up. And the point is, that's not the reality of what I can see. The evidence doesn't back it up, like every other thing they're pointing to. You want to understand where people are persecuted for many different beliefs and being gay, or any number. Look to Israel if you want to understand an obvious example. Or women forced to wear head coverings and all the different stuff. Yep, happens in Israel. It's not a criticism of one versus the other. I'm saying if you have a problem with those things, you might want to look at Israel too, because it's happening there.
Area to a democratic country that's abide by international law of self-defense.
It's like he's not even, it's like he doesn't even know what to say. He's just like equivalence and international law and self-defense and Jew, you hate the Jews. It's just like you're just yelling statements of like talking points. I think you flustered him is what I think happened. I'm good. Well, even if it's not genuine, I thought it was a good moment. So here's Smotrich. Ben-Gvir and Smotrich are two of the most radical fanatic elements of the Zionist movement. He just came out after, in case you missed it, we just reported, I think 3 days ago. They recently put out another post, another kind of reissuing of the argument of the statement, the public statement that these people have warrants out for their arrest. And that anybody who comes across them, any state that's a party to the ICC-ICJ dynamic, is required to arrest them. Smotrich comes out and says Megatron writes this, the International Criminal Court has issued an arrest warrant against Smotrich. He is accused. Now, I don't believe correct me if I'm wrong. I don't believe there's a new one. I could be incorrect about that, but either way, they've already done this. There was already arrest warrants put out in general, and it says he is accused of war. Oh, you know what? I take it back, actually. Maybe I'm remembering incorrectly. I think that was Gantz and Netanyahu. So either way, arrest warrants for the Israeli government, and that's an important point. I don't mean to brush over this. It's about this point is leading to another, and we'll probably come back to this. But the point, though, is that Smotrich being told he's got a warrant out for his arrest. He's accused of war crimes against Palestinian civilians in the West Bank. Accused, for crying out loud. This guy, anyway, the war criminal is now threatening the entire world. It says, issuing arrest warrants against the prime minister is a declaration of war. Issuing arrest warrants against the defense minister and against the finance minister is a declaration of war. And in the face of a declaration of war, we will respond with war. That's what he said. So this is not even that new. John Bolton threatened the families of the ICC when they talked about going after Israel, or even talking about Saudi Arabia. That's what Pompeo did the same thing. These people are monsters, guys. And at the end of the day, he's saying we'll go to war with the international community because you called out our crimes. Pretty easy to understand, isn't it? Now, I'll reiterate the same thing I've said before. Here's the actual document. It is in Hebrew, but feel free to verify it however you like. It's very real, and it's a document that comes directly from the Knesset, the Israeli Congress, that says we do not have to abide by the law. In the state of Israel, the recent quick overview, the whole article is entitled Justifying Land Grab, West Bank. Israel says it is allowed to ignore international law anywhere it wants. So the point is that they're arguing about why they're basically people, even within the Israeli government, were saying, look, you can't take the West Bank. That's a crime. And it is. Everyone knows that. You can't just annex more land. They all know that too. The world sees it as a crime. And so the point was they were discussing that. And then you got people in the Knesset that stood up and made the argument that, well, if we're allowed to do whatever we want anywhere else, which we all agree with, that's like what he's doing, then why would we not be able to take the West Bank? That's essentially the argument. Here's what it wrote. The Knesset has no limitations. So like the Israeli Congress, the Israeli government, the Knesset has no limitation which prevents it from legislating extraterritorially anywhere in the world, including in the West Bank and Gaza. That's a direct quote, not even the first time. And again, you can check it for yourself. From the Israeli government saying we can take land anywhere in the world. Yeah, ask Lebanon, ask Syria, ask Gaza, ask Palestine. Ask Egypt, ask Jordan, ask, Greater Israel Project, guys. It's very obvious. It says, having made that statement, the Israeli government goes on to rebuff the plaintiff's claim that it cannot legislate in the West Bank and goes further to suggest that it is not at all subject to international law. Although the Knesset can legislate any place in the world, although it is entitled to violate the sovereignty of foreign countries through legislation that would be applied to events occurring in their territories, although it is within the authority of the government of Israel to annex any territory, although the Knesset may ignore directives of international law in any area it pleases, despite all of these, the plaintiffs seek to define a rule by which precisely the West Bank and Gaza, which they call Judea and Samaria, the Knesset is prohibited from legislating anything, and that precisely there and nowhere else in the world it is subject to these directives of international law. Think about what he's saying, how clear that is. Basically saying, well, so we all know we can do whatever we want, but now you're going to tell us we can't do it in there? That was his argument, and that was not the first time it was made. I've brought this up so many times. You have to understand, this is right there. They're literally going come on, guys. We all know this is how it is. And so what he's saying in the short point is that they can violate the international law anywhere. They can take land anywhere. And on top of that, they can violate sovereignty of foreign countries through legislation that would be applied to events in their territories. Take that as anti-Semitism legislation. However you want to look at it, that we can do things legislatively that affect those countries' policies. You just can't miss the importance of this. And I brought this up so many times. Now, as Mohammed Safa points out, Israel did it in 1948, genocide. Israel did it in 1956, 1967, 1982, 2000. Look up every one of these, every one of them, and you'll find UN documents, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International going genocide, or rather just human rights, war crimes, killing innocent civilians, killing children. 2002, 2008, 2014, 2021, 2023, 2024 to 25, and of course, it's currently doing it in 2026. 78 years of genocide. Now, here's an interesting insight. Treat the Parsi posted this, and it says Tara moved from Texas. Now, this was posted on May 17, 2026. I'm not going to pretend I know whether he checked the time frame on this. He's claiming moved 5 years ago from Texas. So I'd argue the video at the very least is her 5 years after moving to Israel, but who knows when it was taken. The point is, and I've seen so many of these, if we're going to argue that it ultimately, first of all, that, Palestinians are the terrorists, but that ultimately we're talking about there's a lot of ways to look at this, but it's about the radicalization, right? So if the argument is that this is not what it appears to be, and that people are lied about what Israel's like, and this girl from Texas moved there with her family for 5 years, and this is how she speaks, I really don't know how we can be confused about what people are being taught in Israel. Here's what she says.
Laura, who moved here with her parents from Texas 5 years ago.
Oh, and for the podcast, just a blonde-haired white girl.
And tell me about your two flags.
So this is a flag of the third temple, which we want to build, hopefully here on the Temple Mount.
That's the one that Hegseth is talking about, the one he spoke at, the meeting about the third temple, and so what they want is to destroy I think the most, or at least one of the most religiously important locations in the world for Muslims, but also Christians and also Jews. But right now there's a mosque there. Okay. So it is a mosque, and it's one of the most important places for Muslims in the world. And just generally the location is also for Jews and Christians. They have a prophecy about it being destroyed and rebuilding the third temple. So that's what it's about. And Hegseth has spoken at meetings about that. You can't miss how all this is interconnected. He believes what Israel's doing is a prophecy, which, by the way, includes the fall of the West. You can't forget that. So she's saying this flag is about destroying that building over there, and it's all not secret at all.
Your two flags.
So this is a flag of the third temple, which we want to build, hopefully here on the Temple Mount.
Many people are holding the same flag. The Third Temple movement wants to demolish Al-Aqsa, the third holiest place for Muslims, and build a Jewish temple on the site. We're quickly surrounded by demonstrators. What are they trying to do?
They want to put stickers.
And what do the stickers say?
Kahana was right.
They idolize Meir Kahana.
And we've talked about him, as well as many other elements of the early parts of Zionism that'll give you nightmares.
A far-right American rabbi who moved to Israel and was convicted of multiple acts of terror.
So what would you do to the Palestinians living here?
Here, like in the old city, leave or we'll kill you.
Leave or we'll kill you.
A far-right American terror.
So what would you do to the Palestinians living here?
What would you do to the Palestinians living here?
Here, like in the old city, leave or we'll kill you. I think Islam is cancer, and you don't transfer cancer to another patient.
Well, yeah, there's certainly people that believe that. Laura Loomer, most of Trump's administration, Randy Fine, right? And openly saying that Islam, any Muslim is a monster. Doesn't deserve to be around, shouldn't be in Congress, can't be a doctor. They've said all of these things. Do you not see where it's coming from? Do you not recognize the obvious influence? That's what this is pushing this. And on top of it, overall, guys, the idea that you can ever say that any one group of all, one religion, one race, one anything is all one thing is so incredibly bigoted and ignorant and just wrong, because it's never the case that every single one, it's historically inaccurate. I don't care if it's 99%, 1% or one person, it's just not the picture. And of course, it's obvious in this administration, or rather just specifically this team sport political push. Now, I don't think at all that represents just conservatives in general.
That's not moral. We have to destroy cancer.
And what does destroy look like for you?
To either kill or re-educate all Muslims.
Simple, right? Just to kill them?
Horror removed here with her.
Whichever works first. Well, who has the exact same ideals? That was the Nazi Party. Not to make some hyperbolic point, literally about, or you could talk about China and the Uyghur, like it's the same, the re-education of people. It's what we've always pointed to as a problem. And these people are, and I'm talking about the Zionist political organization that is influencing people on the ground. It's very obvious, which has obviously bought seats in American politics. John Cusack, the actor, points to this, says there's no universe where this is not an evil act. Cold-blooded murder of innocents. This happens every day in Gaza. In a heartbreaking and tragic scene, Hassan points out, he says his friend's father was trying to help one of the injured when Israel bombed the area. Killed him and everyone else there. They were simply trying to help an injured person. And as they were trying to help him, or at least maybe take his body somewhere to be buried, they bombed all of them. Happens every day. There's literally no justification for this. They do it every time. Or rather, I shouldn't say, it's a common thing that they do, and I've shown you many videos of this. And even despite all the evidence, despite someone as high profile and influential as John Cusack with 1.7 million views, it simply doesn't matter. It doesn't change anything. Now, I shouldn't say it like that. I'm not trying to be defeatist. Literally, I should take that back. It has changed everything. People see it. It's talking about it. What it hasn't changed is what they're going through on the ground, which is really what I'm talking about, is stopping their suffering. And I'll include the reality of this, by the way. And this is that thread I put together a long time ago that I still could be adding to. I think it's like 50 plus doctors all around the world. And by the way, not that they're less important to listen to. In fact, they're far more important, especially since they've been murdered by the Israeli government, the journalists and doctors from Gaza. But I made a point to make sure that these were people outside, because the argument tends to be from the detractors that they're all lying. And so it's more important for those people to recognize, if maybe they're honest, that every single one of these people are from the United States, the UK, all around the world, and are telling you, every one of them, that they watched these people kill children or bomb civilians or kill doctors. All of the stuff we're talking about. It's horrifying. On top of that, in case you didn't see this, on May 15th, the Pentagon, Donald Trump's administration, quietly shuts down a legally required program, so another crime, no big deal, to prevent civilian deaths by military watchdog fines. Gee, I wonder if they're going to kill more civilians with the military. What do you think? It's where we are, guys. It's horrifying. I know you see it. Call it out. West Bank. Israeli settlers, May 18th, are currently attacking a village in the West Bank, burning olive fields, attempting to set fire to homes because everyone's looking other directions. They're doing whatever they want. They always have. Residents are urgently calling for help. No one seems to care. Asal Rod says, where is the media coverage or condemnation from world leaders? Where is Israel's terrorism? Why is Israeli terrorism met with silence? Another example from the 20th, that's today. Last night at 4 a.m. Palestinian time, Israeli settlers attacked the town of Halhul in the West Bank, setting multiple vehicles on fire and attempting to burn a family alive while they were asleep. Well, that's something they do. Literally something Robert's written about. And there's a sad story around it I'm sure you've seen before. Israeli settlers consistently use arson attacks to burn Palestinians alive. Here's the example of them dancing and cheering, by the way, with Ben-Gvir. That's Ben-Gvir, and they're dancing with them, showing you, as you can see right here, the child's picture. They're literally burning a picture of that child because they killed him in a building they burned down. It's not a secret. It's not a hyperbolic story. They burned the family down in this building while the child was sleeping. And then when the family was going to deal with this, they were chanting, "Ollie's on the grill," at the family of the toddler that was killed, laughing and dancing and burning his picture. That's the kind of settler movement we're talking about. That's written by the Times of Israel. As always, all this is public, and yet it seems to never get anywhere. Lebanon. Mohammed Safa says Israel's wiping out entire villages in Lebanon, violating Security Council Resolution SCR 1701, ceasefire agreements, and international law with absolutely no consequences. Well, we know why. This is another war crime, and international criminal court remains silent. Look familiar? It should. It is the Gaza model. It's exactly what they're doing everywhere else. As Sarah Abdallah points out, this is posted today. Israel killed every single child in this photo in southern Lebanon within less than 30 days. They were not combatants. They were children. Don't take my word for it. Do your due diligence, guys. This is not Gaza. You can prove these things. These are families that lived in Beirut and lived in these locations, lived in the towns they're exploding, and they're murdering people. And by the way, they're not even hiding it. As Ben-Gvir and the rest, well, they're terrorists and we'll treat them that way. They're telling you what they're doing. The gray zone. Israel bombed a hospital in southern Lebanon and claimed they hit a terror headquarters. Here is Wyatt Reed on the ground.
In Meshouk, in a suburb of Tyre in South Lebanon, behind me, what was until yesterday the main rescue crew headquarters in the area, the Haya Sohaya. This facility also functioned as a healthcare facility serving over 100 people a day. That is until yesterday morning at 1 a.m. when Israel struck with two massive rocket attacks. Behind me, the first of them. Over here to the side, this second. Now, this isn't just a rescue headquarters and healthcare facility. It's also a mosque, the only mosque in all of Lebanon serving both Shia and Sunni Muslims.
And that they don't allow, because this is an obvious, at least part of this is a religious war, seemingly targeted at Christians and Shias, it seems. The point is the Sunni Wahhabist Saudi Arabia led, that's what all their terrorism elements are tied to. Al-Qaeda, the ISIS elements, all of it. It's not a secret, and I'm sure you can discern how important all of this. And clearly, as you can see, the Rubios and the Cruzes and all, they all stand up and fight for the groups that are fighting against this is one of the many religious divides, as they then turn around and blame everybody else for being religiously motivated.
Israel, of course, has a long-standing tradition of claiming that the healthcare centers it targets are secretly terrorist command centers. But picking through the rubble, I found zero proof of any military activity. The only type of evidence I discovered was destroyed medical equipment.
Now, this egregious attack is just the latest in Israel's ongoing war against Lebanese healthcare. 160 attacks have been documented on healthcare facilities and medical workers. This is the 5th rescue facility that's been targeted by Israel in its ongoing war. 4 hospitals have been bombed as well. The horrifying damage you see around me is just a small taste of what Israel has been unleashing on the people of South Lebanon for months.
Wyrie's doing good work. By the way, on another side note, I actually don't know if it was Propaganda and Co. or Gray Zone, because I know they were both in Iran, but both of them went to the bombing location of the girls' school, the Menab Girls' School. And now, like I think it was yesterday or today, Sky News goes out there and they're like, breaking news, the first group on the ground of the bomb. It's just, and it's not like they don't see it. They just don't consider independent media valid. It's so lazy. And so it's, by the way, it's fun. It's the same thing we deal with other levels of the false independent media. It's the same kind of thing, but it's just funny because they were there and they broke this down. And then all of a sudden, now that they're there proving it, the corporate media has to rush in and act like they do it too. You're late to the party, guys, and you know why. Because they're not really trying to break this stuff down, in my opinion. Well, as well to end, Jamie points out, can anyone explain to me why Israel? This is a good question. And only Israel is able to order people from another country to evacuate their homes. Anybody? I don't care if you want to go, they're trying to protect them, which is not true. You can prove it. Still not legal. They can't just be like, you guys have to leave because we're going to bomb your homes. Why does that even make sense to anybody? It doesn't, but nobody seems to speak up about it. Israel's issued an evacuation order for Tyre, Lebanon, displacing 200,000 more people. Tyre is an ancient, I think it's a Phoenician city and Roman ruins and what is it? Hippodrome. The point overall, guys, is we're talking about something that is objectively illegal. I don't know why. I mean, I do, it's just frustration. It's very, I'm not going to tell you I can define explicitly what the mechanism is, but are we confused? Israel does something that nobody else can do that's objectively illegal and immoral and wrong. And then all the human rights defenders don't care. Well, they're either controlled, not what they say they are, or, you fill in the blank. But you can't keep pretending like we live in the world we think we do when we keep seeing stuff like this. Just doesn't make sense. So today I'm going to end with something. It's about 23 minutes long. I think I'm just going to let it all play, even though we're over 3 hours. I think it's a really good clip. Muhammad Jihad does a great job breaking down the history of Israel. And if you've been watching this far, stay tuned. This is ridiculous how obvious all of this is. You've been lied to your entire life about what Israel actually is, about what they founded on, what the political organization of Zionism was actually about. But it's coming out, guys, and I'm telling you, people are seeing it. So I'll leave you with this clip today. As he wrote here, this short film exposes the true story of Israel's creation. He's in it. He's the one basically outlining it entirely through the words of its own founders, which is important. For decades, Israel's lies have been carefully designed to demonize its victims, to ensure that no matter the crimes it commits, the children it slaughters, the world remains incapable of empathy for Palestinians. And by the way, anybody else they're at war with. Or at best, treats it with the same apathy that has allowed this to go on for as long as it has. On the 78th anniversary of its creation, on the 15th of May, it's time the world knew that Israel's past is not different from the brutal present the world is finally seeing. So I'll leave this. It'll be, played out. Stay tuned if you can check it out. I think it's important. Otherwise, the link will be included. Now, for those that didn't catch the beginning, there's some family stuff that's going on in regard to my father being in the hospital, and it might end up causing me having to take a break away to be there for him. And I just don't know what that'll look like in the next couple of weeks, if longer. So at the end of the day, I just want to make sure you guys know that. And I'll be talking to you, letting you know if anything changes. One of the things I was thinking about is if, maybe it's I'm not even sure how that would work, but somebody that could fill in and do the show, daily wrap up, if I had to be away. I had never had to think about that before, but overall, until then, I'm going to, continue to try to work. But just, at the end of the day, that it's something that is weighing and definitely maybe taking some time away. I mean, I'm frustrated on just a personal work note because I'm really trying to get into this momentum of the time frame, and I'm hoping this ultimately, for many reasons, because I just hope that he's okay, and I hope that this doesn't go in a negative direction. Because at the end of the day, this has to do with previous medical choices that we all talk about and things that we fought against, and it is just the way it is. People make their own choices, and I want to hope that this is not going in that direction, and hope that if it does, that the doctors actually listen to what we have to say, because it's hard what's happening with all this. But thank you for tuning in, guys. Appreciate your support. Please send your positive energy and your prayers and whatever else out there, because he needs it. Please support this platform because we'll continue fighting for you. It's what we need today, don't we? Just people willing to stand up for what we believe in, even if we may be wrong. It's weird to see people out there that seem to just kind of cow to whatever the momentum is, whatever the political game is, whatever they want you to think that day. I support the current thing, whether it's this platform or AM Wake Up or anybody in the IMA, supporting people that truly stand by what they believe in, stand to have principles that they just will not challenge. That's, again, that's why I like what Massie's doing, even if it turns out to be false. It's something that I'm like, thank God, finally, we're seeing something that represents a consistent action by somebody. It's just a breath of fresh air. But that's exactly why I'm skeptical, and I think we all should be. But hope for the best. Thank you for tuning in today, guys. I love you all. As always, question everything. Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.
Have you ever wondered how we've come to normalize the idea of people returning to their ancestral homeland after 3,000 years, while at the same time demonizing those who had been living there and were forced out from their homes and villages. Because for years, not just you, but Jewish people around the world have been told lie after lie to justify it.
We were conquered by the Romans, we were conquered by the Byzantines. They did a lot of bad things to us, but they didn't really exile us, contrary to what people think. The loss of our land actually occurred when the Arab conquest took place in the 7th century.
What if I told you that by the time Arabs entered Jerusalem in the 7th century, there were no Jews left there, and more importantly, that it is the Arabs who invited them back? And that's not even a disputable historical fact.
The Muslims are the ones who allowed the Jews to return and live in Jerusalem.
I am not familiar with any sources showing the exiling of Jews or others from the land during the Arab conquest, or of any testimonies of such an expulsion. In fact, the opposite.
These are respected Jewish historians. Do you think the Prime Minister of the only Jewish state doesn't know the history of his own people? This wasn't an incidental lie. It's a lie carefully designed to demonize the victim. To make sure that no matter the crimes Israel commits, the children it slaughters, or how often this plays in front of your eyes, you remain incapable of empathy for Palestinians. The lie about Arabs expelling Jews wasn't Netanyahu's first, nor his last.
Hitler didn't want to exterminate the Jews at the time, he wanted to expel the Jews. And Haj Amin al-Husseini went to Hitler and said, if you expel them, they'll all come here. So what should I do with them? He asked. He said, burn them.
A lie so obvious, so offensive, that even a pathological liar like Netanyahu had to retract it. Nor was he the only Israeli leader to lie. They all have from the very, very start. And on the 78th anniversary of the creation of Israel, it is time to expose these lies, so you know that Israel's history is not much different than the brutal present the world is finally seeing. You've heard many times that Israel accepted partition, that it wanted peace with its Arab neighbors, but that is a lie.
After the formation of a large army in the wake of the establishment of the state, we will abolish partition and expand to the whole of Palestine.
That is a direct quote from David Ben-Gurion, Israel's founding father and its first prime minister. He said this in a meeting of the Jewish Executive Agency in 1938. That was 10 years before the so-called Arab attack on the Jewish state. Could he have changed his mind? No. It was, according to his own words, a strategy, a very effective one.
The establishment of a state, even if only on a portion of the land, is the maximal reinforcement of our strength at the present time and a powerful boost to our historical endeavors to liberate the entire country.
A strategy that he and other major leaders of the Zionist movement agreed on.
We shall spread in the whole country in the course of time. This is only an arrangement for the next 25 to 30 years.
That's Chaim Weizmann, Israel's first president, and he wrote that in a letter to the British High Commissioner, again, back in 1938. In fact, in 1948, the Palestinians did not want to fight.
While the Palestinians were trying to maintain calm in the country, the Haganah did all it could to escalate the situation.
Yes, that's from the British High Commissioner. And that wasn't even controversial. Israeli leaders knew this reality very well.
I believe the majority of Palestinian masses accept the partition as a fait accompli. They don't believe it is possible to overcome or reject it. The decisive majority of them do not want to fight us.
So why was there a war? Because these Zionist leaders didn't just want part of the land. They didn't want all land either. They wanted it all empty of Palestinians.
The total population of the Jewish state at the time of its establishment will be about 1 million, including almost 40% non-Jews. Such a population composition does not provide a stable basis for a Jewish state. There can be no stable and strong Jewish state so long as it has a Jewish majority of only 60%.
And their solution for this was ethnic cleansing.
We must expel the Arabs and take their places, and if we have to use force to guarantee our own right to settle in those places, then we have force at our disposal.
To achieve that, they started provoking the Palestinians.
Actions such as the one in Al-Qisas will prompt quiet Arabs to act against us.
Our actions against Qisas ignited the Galilee, and this was a good thing.
They knew the Palestinians didn't want to fight, but they started provoking them, terrorizing them, so they could ethnically cleanse them.
It is impossible to expel 114,000 people who lived in the Galilee without terror. There had to have been an element of initial terror for them to live.
They did it through massacres all over Palestine, in Tantura.
השתוללו בטנטורה היה משהו נורא. טנטורה היה כפר עשיר, בתים יפים, גרים כמו אירופאים, אתה יודע, וגם אנשים היו לבושות ויפה, ובאמת היה כפר... אחד אנס שם איזה ילדה בת 16, משהו כזה. אתה מבין? אבל זה מכוער מאוד, והשתיקו את הדבר הזה. והיו חבר'ה שלקחו את הלוויורים, ורדפו אחרי חבר'ה ושרפו אותם. זה היה משהו זוועתי, וזה אסור לספר, אני לא אדבר על זה, כי זה יכול להיות סקנדל שלם מהעניין הזה.
In Safsaf.
In Safsaf, after the inhabitants had raised a white flag, the soldiers collected and separated the men and women, tied the hands of 50-60 Falahin peasants, and shot and killed them and buried them in a pit. Also, they raped several women.
In Al-Dawaima.
Cultured officers had turned into base murderers, and this not in the heat of battle, but out of a system of expulsion and destruction. The less Arabs remained, the better. This principle is the political motor for the expulsions and the atrocities.
In Haifa.
This British intelligence report describes the attack on Haifa. There was considerable congestion outside the East Gate of hysterical and terrified Arab women and children and old people, on whom the Jews opened up on mercilessly with fire.
And in the infamous Deir Yassin.
I saw cut-off genitalia and women's crushed stomachs. It was direct murder. Soldiers shot everyone they saw, including women and children. Parents begged commanders to stop the slaughter, to please stop shooting.
יושבים בחדר, משפחה. אתה זורק פנימה רימון, אז מה הפלא שהרימון קורע אותם? זה היה דבר נורא.
עד היום לא אשכח את זה. היה שם עץ גדול, והיה קשור אליו בחור ערבי, והעץ הזה היה אחרי שריפה. צרפו. קשרו אותו וצרפו.
There was a feeling of considerable slaughter, and it was hard for me to explain it to myself as having been done in self-defense. My impression was more of a massacre than anything else. If it is a matter of killing innocent civilians, then it can be called a massacre.
הם לקחו והעמידו 10-15 ערבים בשורה ליד קיר, גברים, נשים וטף, וירו בהם ככה.
You can hear directly from the Irgun commander at Deir Yassin explain why they did it with such brutality.
רוצה לשמוע את האמת? עד היום. האף שלי בשמיים. ב9 לאפריל נכבשה דיר יאסין. וכולם התחילו לברוח. מדוע הם צעקו דיר יאסין עלינה? הם ברחו מחיפה, ברחו מיפו, ברחו מכל... הכל בגלל דיר יאסין. דיר יאסין עלינה, הפחד של דיר יאסין. לו היו אז עוד 3-4 דיר יאסינים בארץ ישראל, לא היה נשאר אף ערבי אחד בארץ. ממה את חושבת כל הפליטים האלה במדינות? בלבנון, בירדן, בסוריה, ממה? בגלל מי? את יודעת בגלל מי? יש יהודי אחד שיכול להגיד את זה בגללו. אני פיקדתי על דיר יאסין.
Do you need more evidence on who was the oppressor and who was the victim? Because there is. All of this was the result of direct orders from David Ben-Gurion.
We walked outside, Ben-Gurion accompanying us.
Alton repeated his question, what is to be done with the population? David Ben-Gurion waved his hand in a gesture which said, drive them out.
That's a testimony from future Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, who was personally involved in the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians. And David Ben-Gurion didn't just order the ethnic cleansing, he even ordered the brutality against women and children.
We need to harm them without mercy, women and children included. Otherwise, this is not an effective reaction. During the operation, there is no need to distinguish between guilty and not guilty.
And he knew all the gruesome details as soldiers perpetrated his vision.
Battalion 22 arrested the man and woman. They killed the man, washed her, and then 22 men gang raped her.
And this was not a random incident. Here is what hardcore Zionist historian Benny Morris said when asked about how many rape cases took place in 1948.
In Acre, 4 soldiers raped a girl and murdered her and her father. In Jaffa, soldiers of the Kiryati Brigade raped 1 girl and tried to rape several more. At Hunin, which is in the Galilee, 2 girls were raped and then murdered. There were 1 or 2 cases of rape at Tamtura, south of Haifa. There was 1 case of rape at Kula, in the center of the country. At the village of Abu Shusha, near Kibbutz Geza, there were 4 female prisoners, 1 of whom was raped a number of times, and there were other cases. Usually more than 1 soldier was involved. Usually there were 1 or 2 Palestinian girls. In a large proportion of the cases, the event ended with murder. Because neither the victims nor the rapists like to report these events, we have to assume that the dozen cases of rape that were reported, which I found, are not the whole story. They are just the tip of the iceberg.
When a New York Times reporter discovered one of the massacres, David Ben-Gurion did exactly what Israeli leaders do today when the IDF is caught red-handed. First, he denied it, and then issued a public apology saying it was a mistake. But 3 months later, he included the bombing that resulted in the murder of 5 Palestinian children in a list of successful operations. Of course, Israeli leaders considered it successful. You heard the Israeli commander at Deir Yassin explain why. But now, hear from Menachem Begin, who became Israel's prime minister in 1977. In 1948, Begin was the leader of the Irgun, the Jewish terrorist group that committed many of those massacres.
Panic overwhelmed the Arabs of Eretz Israel. The legend of Deir Yassin helped us in particular in the saving of Tiberias and the conquest of Haifa. All the Jewish forces proceeded to advance through Haifa like a knife through butter. The Arabs began fleeing in panic, shouting, Deir Yassin! Deir Yassin!
These horror stories didn't spread organically. Here is Yagal alone, commander of the Balmach, Israel's elite forces, explaining how they used a tactic called whisper propaganda to ensure that tens of thousands of Arabs would flee in fear.
And I asked them to whisper in the ears of several Arabs that a giant Jewish reinforcement had reached the Galilee and were about to clean out the villages of Hula, and to advise them as friends to flee while they could.
But remember what Israel's leaders told the world.
Their lands hadn't seen the reason why they left their lands. We didn't compel them to leave. They left on their own will, or rather on the will of the Arab leaders.
A lie their supporters continue to repeat to this day.
The Arabs said, leave your homes, and then, when the war's over, you're going to come back and take everything.
Just like the lie that Israel wanted peace in 1948, but Arab countries attacked the infant Jewish state. The Deir Yassin massacre, for example, was on April 9th, 1948. Do you know when the Arab armies declared war? May 15th, 1948. Only weeks later, after its horror stories had reached Arab capitals from Palestinian refugees. In fact, if you read the Arab League statement in May 1948, it clearly stated that these massacres are the reason they entered the war, to protect the defenseless Palestinian population.
The events which have taken place in Palestine have unmasked the aggressive intentions and the imperialistic designs of the Zionists, including the atrocities committed by them against the peace-loving Arab inhabitants, especially in Deir Yassin, Tiberias, and others.
But Israel and its supporters often describe the Arab rejection of partition as a desire for war. But this too is a lie. The Arabs were pushing for a democratic state with protection for all religions. They were making a simple argument. How can 55% of the territory be given to the Jewish state when the Jewish people only own 7% of the land? That wasn't an unreasonable stance at the time. In fact, both George Marshall, the US Secretary of State, and James Forstall, the Secretary of Defense, were against the partition. But Truman infamously said,
"I have to answer to hundreds of thousands who are anxious for the success of Zionism. I do not have hundreds of thousands of Arabs among my constituents."
While the Arabs were pursuing the diplomatic path, the Zionist leaders wanted the war.
We will be able to not only defend ourselves, but also to inflict death blows on the Syrians in their own country and take over Palestine as a whole. We can face all the Arab forces. This is not a mystical belief, but a cold and rational calculation based on practical examination.
They even killed the UN peace mediator, Count Folke Bernadotte, because peace would have put an end to their ethnic cleansing project. The order was given by a leader of another Jewish terrorist group, the Lihi. Like Begin, Yitzhak Shamir also went on to become Prime Minister of Israel, and he famously said,
"I did what I had to do. I have no regrets and I have no apologies."
Since when does someone who seeks peace kill the mediator? These leaders presented the war as an existential threat to Jews, that the Arabs were attacking Israel because they're anti-Semitic, to get world Jewry to blindly support the Zionist cause, a tactic they use to this day. But in their closed chambers, these leaders knew it was not anti-Semitism.
What cause have we to complain about their fierce hatred for us? For 8 years now, they sit in the refugee camps in Gaza, and before their eyes, we turn into our homestead, the land and villages in which they and their forefathers have lived.
Moshe Dayan was talking about stealing actual Palestinian homes. Israelis didn't just steal land from Palestinians. They took homes, their furniture, their belongings. And they did all of this in the most brutal way possible. Today, many Jewish people are deeply offended if anyone compares Israeli actions to those of the Nazis. But that's how their own soldiers described their behavior.
Where did they come by such a measure of cruelty, like Nazis? Is there no more humane way of expelling the inhabitants than by such methods?
It's telling that even for that Israeli soldier, the goal of ethnic cleansing wasn't seen as a problem. It just should have been carried out more humanely. And it wasn't just young soldiers that compared IDF actions to those of the Nazis.
I couldn't sleep all night. I felt that things that were going on were hurting my soul, the soul of my family, and all of us here. Now Jews too have behaved like Nazis, and my whole being is shaken.
All of these crimes were not a secret back then.
When a real and final catastrophe should befall us in Palestine, the first responsible for it would be the British, and the second responsible for it, the terrorist organizations built up from our own ranks. I am not willing to see anybody associated with those misled and criminal people.
The criminal people Albert Einstein is referring to here are the Irgun and the Lihi, the Jewish terrorist groups whose leaders Israelis later elected as prime ministers. Begin and Shamir also founded the Likud, the party that Benjamin Netanyahu now leads. After all the lies and manipulation, the world doesn't know any of this. They only know this infamous quote from Golda Meir.
When the peace comes, we will perhaps in time be able to forgive the Arabs for killing our sons, but it will be harder for us to forgive them for having forced us to kill their sons. Peace will come when the Arabs will love their children more than they hate us.
Suggesting that Arabs hate Jews more than they love their own children is another lie, designed not just to hide Israel's crimes, but to demonize their victims. Are there any other people in history who suffered this level of brutality and then watched the world sympathize more with their oppressors? They define Zionism as Jewish people's right to self-determination in their ancestral homeland, and that opposing it is anti-Semitic. That framing is designed to manipulate you, because no one has a right to commit a crime. You have the right to live, but can you then use that right to justify killing someone, harvesting their heart, because you need a transplant to live? Because that's exactly what they did. Rape, the murder of innocent civilians, the destruction of entire villages, even the killing of children was all allowed to ethnically cleanse the Palestinians and create the Jewish state. How is opposing a crime anti-Semitic? Crimes they continue to this day, crimes they always knew they will have to commit. Listen to Lord Jacob Rothschild explain why his family found the Balfour Declaration unsatisfactory.
This letter comes out as a rather compromising letter. I mean, the essential point is there for the Jewish community to fasten on to. You have the first bit, which promises a national home rather than the national home, and then you have the bit that nothing that's to be done should in any way harm the Arab community.
Compromising, because it didn't allow them to harm the Arab community. And that was in 1917, before the formation of the PLO, Hamas, and Hezbollah, even before most Palestinians understood what was being planned against them. They knew they would need to harm the Arab community to create the Jewish state, because Palestinians won't leave their land.
Never in history, or I think there will be a nation that gives up its land of its own volition.
And now they're saying you're anti-Semitic if you don't accept what they do to empty the land of Palestinians. And this isn't about history, because they're doing it again now, but this time in front of your eyes, with more brutality and more impunity. They've destroyed 80% of Gaza, blocking humanitarian aid, raping prisoners, dropping 2,000-pound bombs on families in refugee camps, hospitals, universities, mosques, and churches, shooting civilians for sport, journalists, aid workers, medics, even targeting children. And opposing it is not anti-Semitism. Refusing that your tax dollars continue to fund this is not anti-Semitism. Asking questions of your politicians who enable this is not anti-Semitism. And demanding justice for Palestinians is not anti-Semitism. Have empathy for Palestine now.